Chapter 80. A mess on the front line. Rain. Pouring, icy, seemingly endless rain. Murky water, thick with mud, hammered against forehead protectors, sluiced down dark green flak vests, and finally bled into the uneven brown sludge underfoot. The air reeked of wet earth, rotting plants, and the faint, metallic tang of blood. The ground, pitted by countless footprints and ceaselessly washed by rain, had become a maze of ruts and rivulets. Under a gray, sagging sky, Konoha's relief column pushed forward with difficulty. Naoki's foot skidded. He pitched headlong into a water-filled pit, splattering his brand-new Chunin vest with mud from collar to hem. Grumbling about this damned place, he scrambled up under Makoto's worried glance, cheeks burning. Makoto's fine brows knit slightly. Rain had soaked her bound black hair, pasting it to her pale cheeks. Chakra flowed steady at her feet. Her light, measured steps spoke of excellent fundamentals. At the very front, Tsunade's crimson jacket with the giant, gamble, character was soaked through, clinging to her powerful frame. Water dripped in steady beads from her golden bangs. Her eyes, sharp as blades cutting through the rain, swept the rolling low hills and sparse, dead woods around them. At the slightest stir of grass, every nerve in her body drew taut. Ryo walked beside her, tall. Short, flamered hair plastered to his brow, water traced the severe lines of his face. His calm gaze slid across the porridge-soft ground and the blurred curtain of rain beyond. His brow creased, just a fraction. This damned place. Naoki wiped his face again, repeating himself with more feeling. The rain distorted his voice. Ryo's voice was low but carried cleanly through the deluge, edged with chill. Worse than expected. Why isn't the main camp on the fire country border? Tsunade didn't hide her annoyance. She shot him a look, temper suppressed but audible. Because the commander ordered it. She didn't need to say who. Everyone in earshot knew, Shimura Danzo. Ryo said nothing more. Rain slid along his brow and down his cheek. Setting the main base where the supply line would bog into mud and the wounded had no chance to recover. Danzo's field command defied description. Orochimaru would have done better. The comparison flickered across Ryo's mind. Orochimaru might be crueler, but in jungle terrain he would at least choose higher, drier ground for a camp. How's the situation? When Tsunade reached the outer sentry line, she asked the air directly. Orochimaru seemed to seep out of a crack in the rocks. His pallid face looked even more somber in the rain. Gold serpentine pupils glinted, not with Danzo's paranoia, but with pure contempt for inefficiency and incompetence. Not ideal, he said evenly, eyes cold, mind clearly racing. He had a dozen plans, faster and perhaps harsher, but under Danzo's rigid, dead-handed command they were worthless. That old fool. I never thought a Megakure would be this strong, Jiraiya muttered nearby, voice drained and touched with lingering dread. He slumped against a slick boulder, white hair matted like seaweed, spattered with mud and gods know what. The swagger was washed out of him by cold, ceaseless rain. The old man's right. If we let Hanzo keep growing, he'll be a serious threat. Tsunade joined them, heavy with the scent of herbs and damp earth. She didn't spare Jiraiya a glance. Her eyes drilled into Orochimaru. And the intel you gathered doesn't match the strength the Megakure is showing. What did you miss? Jiraiya pushed himself upright, scratching at the mud in his hair with a bitter smile. Ask our commander, why don't you? I'm the errand boy. He leaned hard on the words, commander. Tsunade snorted, arms crossed. Rain traced the tight lines of her shoulders, clenched with anger. HMPH. I'd rather fight out here than go back and look at that face. The words found their target, Danzo, and the floodgate opened. I've finished the antidote formula for salamander toxin and handed it to the head medic in the infirmary. They can handle follow-up casualties. But, Jiraiya glanced at her stormy expression, then asked carefully, is it okay to walk out of the primary battle zone like this and come straight to our outer line? Danzo will. What's not okay? Tsunade cut in, voice like a blade. I'm a doctor, and a combat ninja. I've seen enough of his face. Out here I can counter Hanzo's raiding parties and reinforce you at once. The subtext was crystal clear. Stay far from Danzo. Free to operate. Tsunade's pissed. Orochimaru's pissed. Of course. Danzo's been disgusting people for years. Only Jiraiya, thick-skinned as leather, could still force a grin. I heard you left your student in the village. Orochimaru turned to Jiraiya. The grin on Jiraiya's face froze. He sprang up, cursing, and who are you to talk? Didn't you leave Naoki back in Konoha too? Hey! Orochimaru's laugh rasped. His golden eyes lingered on Jiraiya with malicious amusement. Laugh all you, Jiraiya started, then every hair on his back stood up. A killing intent like a sheet of ice dropped over him. He turned stiffly. Tsunade stood behind him, expressionless. Her pretty almond eyes held no warmth. A pale blue chakra aura wreathed her clenched fist, blazing, terrifying against the gray rain. The air thrummed, low and heavy, with pressure. Jiraiya's scream sliced the rain. Boom. He hit the boulder like a battering ram smashing a wall. The rock webbed with fractures. Jiraiya stuck at the center like a grotesque fresco, limbs askew, unmoving, save for a slow, bloody trickle mixing with the rain down his brow. Orochimaru's pupils narrowed, then smoothed. The faintest curve touched his lips, almost pleased. Naoki gaped at the human-shaped dent, mind blank. Makoto lowered her eyes. Ryo merely cast a brief glance at the embedded silhouette, confirmed the life force was intact, then looked past them into the deep veil of rain. He didn't much care about Jiraiya's bruises, but that surge of power from Tsunade, that he filed away. Tsunade slowly unclenched her fist. The chakra halo faded. She exhaled hard, as if spitting out the sticky irritation clogging her chest, disgust at Danzo, at this bog of a battlefield, at the feeling of being hobbled. She turned to Orochimaru. How's the camp? The supply lines are a river of mud. Enormous pressure, Orochimaru said, flat but barbed. Transport losses skyrocket in this weather. Rations barely hold at the front. Medical stores exist, but they're burning fast. As for the wounded, in this environment, infection rates are staggering. Danzo's incompetence, another ankle weight dragging them down. Tsunade's frown deepened. No response from Danzo. He's considering moving the command post into a drier cave. Orochimaru's sarcasm all but steamed in the rain, voice as cold as the mud. At that moment, a courier in a standard dark vest, face smeared with fatigue and muck, splashed up and bowed deeply to Tsunade, chest heaving. Tsunadesima. By order of Commander Danzo, report to headquarters at once for urgent war council. The tone brooked no dispute. But, urgent war council, in this suffocating gloom, sounded especially suspect. Fury flashed in Tsunade's eyes. She drew breath to snap, but thought of the collapsing lines, the men dying in filth, the chain of command snarled around Danzo's ego. She clenched and unclenched her fist, then said coldly, understood. She looked back at the team she had brought, Naoki, still half-caked in mud, Makoto, quiet and tired but composed, Ryo, impossibly calm. Move. Her order to Naoki, Makoto, and Ryo was clipped and iron-hard, pure battlefield command. Then she turned to Orochimaru and to Jiraiya, who had just pried himself out of the rock and was rubbing a lump visibly swelling on his head. The perimeter is yours. Any anomaly, summon me. Count on it, Orochimaru nodded. Why? Ow, got it, got it. Jiraiya winced, hand cupping his throbbing skull. Tsunade led Naoki, Makoto, and Ryo after the courier toward the main encampment. Naoki tried to stand tall, but the mud and rookie jitters showed through. Makoto kept her silence, guarding her poise. Ryo remained a silent reef in the storm. The rain thickened. Sight shortened. The mud sucked at their steps, demanding more strength with every pace. Naoki gritted his teeth, matching Ryo's unbothered stride as best he could. At last, through the heavy gray of rain, the outline of a sprawling camp wavered into view. Not the expected fortress of high palisades, but a sprawling, hasty encampment thrown up along the edge of slightly higher marshland. Crooked wooden shivakstafries sagged in blackened, waterlogged soil. Cloaked sentries slogged along, spiritless, like sleepwalkers in a wet nightmare. In the center of the muddy tracks lay rows of wounded, shrouded in tarps or strapped to rough stretchers. Pained groans and suppressed coughs blended with the rain into a dirge of despair. The stench hit them, sour armpits, blood, and the foul tang of waste that couldn't be washed away in the damp. Mednin hurried between stretchers, vests stained with suspicious smears, faces drawn and numb. The air was thick with the odor of herbs, but it couldn't mask the rotten reek of death. Near the rear, against a rock face, several larger tents marked the core area. One black command tent, hung with a banner, stood out, deliberately solemn, out of tune with the chaos around it. This way, Tsunadesima. The courier brought them to a massive tent labeled as the temporary infirmary. Danzo-sama orders that you settle your subordinates, then report to the command tent immediately. Tsunade stared at the canvas heavy with the stink of medicine and muffled moans, and remembered the antidote formula she had prepared, the instructions she had left. Danzo's intent couldn't be clearer, dump the mess on Tsunade and walk away. Not happening. She drew a long breath. Her cold anger felt almost solid. Ignoring the courier, She strode forward and ripped open the reeking, sodden flap of the infirmary tent. To be continued. 4 comments 0 vote. Chapter 81. Do you take me for a fool? Bonus. Crack. The sky split open like a shattered dam. Sheets of rain battered the land of rain, turning heaven and earth into a gray curtain. The stillness was so suffocating it seemed to crush the air itself. The mud clung to Naoki's ankles like it was alive. Every step came free with a wet squelch. His brand new green Chunin vest. Unrecognizable. Covered in mud, tangled grass, and a dark red stain that refused to wash out, he looked like a walking rag. Damn it! Naoki shouted, stomping the ground in frustration. Thud. Mud splashed upward, coating his face and even peppering Makoto a few steps away. Her black uniform was instantly speckled brown. Makoto's brows twitched slightly. Rain streamed down her soaked black hair, plastered to her pale cheeks. She said nothing, quietly stepping aside, out of range of Naoki's mud barrage, her empty gaze sinking back into the endless gray rain. Only the sound of rain remained. They circled the outermost ring of the massive encampment, the muddiest buffer zone, again and again. Defense. Purely symbolic. The assignment was miserable, monotonous, and exhausting. Whatever war hero dream Naoki had was long gone. Ryo. Naoki wiped mud from his face and shouted toward the broad-shouldered figure walking ahead in a dark, battered rain cloak. The rain distorted his voice. How long are we going to rot here? We haven't even seen a single Suna shinobi. My new blade's gonna rust. He slapped the scabbard at his hip, splattering more mud. Ryo didn't respond. His steps were steady, boots pressing through the sludge. The hood hid his face, revealing only a sharp jawline. Rusty blades, a voice colder than the rain replied, are better than broken people. Quote, comma, dot, quote. Naoki swallowed his retort, cheeks burning beneath the mud. Restless, his gaze darted toward Makoto. Makoto, say something, will you? What's the point of walking in circles like mud monkeys? Can't we get a real assignment? I'll even go as bait if it means action. Look at my sensei, Orochimaru. His head was filled with visions of glory, but he was trapped here instead, simmering with frustration. Called out, Makoto finally turned her empty eyes toward him. The shortest answer possible, cold as frost. Her lashes trembled with raindrops before she lowered her gaze again. A dull camp. Boring patrols. Compared to the storm in her chest, it was nothing. Her grandfather's expectations, the elders' pressure, and Kushina's bright, trusting smile, all tangled around her heart like a frozen serpent. The rain couldn't extinguish that fire. Naoki. Shut your mouth. Tsunade's voice erupted like a whip. She stopped abruptly, her crimson cloak flicking a spray of mud. Naoki nearly collided with her back. You've been whining the entire way. Tired of living already. She spun around, her golden hair plastered to her face, her eyes bloodshot with exhaustion. The rain couldn't wash the fury from her expression. Keep talking and I'll send your name straight to Danzo's suicide squad. You want to serve Konoha? Go die gloriously, how about that? Naoki shrank under her glare, his neck retreating into his shoulders. HMPH. Tsunade snorted, done wasting breath. Her gaze slid past Ryo's solid back and landed briefly on Makoto, whose shoulders stiffened slightly. Tsunade's tone dropped low, edged with the bitterness she carried from the infirmary. You two, keep an eye on this loudmouth. This is the West Wing buffer. Orochimaru and Jiraiya are fighting Hanzo's main force. As for Danzo, her lip curled in contempt. Who knows what kind of snakes he's hiding in his gut? The infirmary. At that word, her eyes flashed with fury. Her teeth clicked hard. I risk my life and use these hands to clean up his messes. He better have every hand and herb ready when I ask. If he's missing one needle. Her fist clenched. Then no one rests. That rat in the gutter, Shimura Danzo. Ever since they arrived in this waterlogged hell, he hadn't stopped his schemes. Tsunade's medical expertise is vital, she must not be moved. The camp's stability depends on Tsunade's unit, they cannot be deployed to the front. Utter nonsense. Her elite squad should have been the spearhead breaking the stalemate in aim, but Danzo had pinned them in the mud, disguised under noble-sounding excuses. Securing the flank. A joke. The princess of Konoha, reduced to a patcher of wounds in a swamp. It was humiliation, deliberate and political. He had buried her under logistics, away from the command table. She remembered the day she first entered the camp. The stench nearly made her gag. She pulled open the flap and stepped into hell. Harsh lamplight illuminated rows of wounded piled on stretchers, blood and pus seeping through filthy cloth. The muffled cries pressed against her throat like a hand. The mednin. Drained husks, hollow-eyed and bloodless, stumbling between bodies, trying to stitch, staunch, and heal. Their faces were gray and lifeless. This was Konoha's infirmary. No. It was a slaughterhouse. To tighten his grip, Danzo had planted the camp in a low, muddy sink, perfect for his route to lurk and perfect for burying the wounded. When Tsunade stepped in, rage exploded in her skull. She wanted to storm the command tent and crush Danzo to paste. She was born to break lines, not to be chained to a blood-soaked table. She refused to clean up his filth. But she didn't move. Hashirama's blood gave her monstrous strength and a compassion too heavy to ignore. Something stronger than rage forced her to stop. A healer's duty is to save lives. That voice from deep in memory restrained her. By sheer will, she swallowed the fury. She ripped the tarp from a wounded recruit, half conscious from pain, his leg rotting with green necrosis. Her voice snapped. Medical Unit 4, everyone, here, now. She shoved stretchers aside. Hands that could crush stone were slick with blood as she grabbed a stunned medic by the collar. Don't just stand there. Herbs, serum, clean cloth, move. Days passed without sleep. Tsunade became a relentless machine, an angel of death wielding a scalpel like a god. Through sheer authority and discipline, she dragged the chaos back under control. She brewed antitoxin serum to counter the salamander's poison, enforced isolation and sanitation, reorganized teams, redrew sectors, and issued dirty orders. The Tsunade Iron Code was burned into every medic's mind. They spent every drop of chakra and will, and finally, the death toll slowed. The price. She was spent, her heart turned to ice. This wasn't who she was meant to be. She was a fighter, not a surgeon. Every stitch was another scar on her pride. It was degrading. The moment she caught her breath, Danzo's vultures came calling. Tsunadesima, Danzo-sama requests your presence. Tsunadesima, Danzo-sama awaits to discuss strategy. Tsunadesima, to the command tent. Frontline intelligence needs your analysis. Excuses piled high as corpses. Crisis at the front. Defense adjustment. Logistics review. Empty words. Every time, that old face put on the same mask of sacrifice for Konoha, preaching about the greater good and necessary balance, wearing her patience thin. Again and again, he provoked her, testing her limit, hoping she would explode. She wasn't naive. He was trying to force her into a mistake. If she lost control, he could send her unit into the grinder, and once she was gone, Ryo's team would be headless. In Danzo's camp, taking a genin was as easy as pocketing a kunai. Even if she stayed, could she restrain herself forever? He had plenty of excuses to scatter her subordinates, sending them to meaningless patrols or abandoning them to the mud. And most of all, Ryo. The boy Danzo wanted most. To Danzo, someone like Ryo belonged in the shadows of Root, the perfect weapon. That greed bloomed the moment he read Ryo's file. Innately cold, near emotionless. Absolute rationality. The essence of his power, pure annihilation. A born assassin. A perfect killing machine. And then, the benevolent Hiruzen snatched him away with talk of humanity and the village's future. Worse, Tsunade stood against him, her Senju influence protecting the boy right under his nose. Every time he remembered that, Danzo's eyes burned. He had lost his perfect specimen. Tsunade's fists tightened until her knuckles turned white. Her nails dug into her palms. Standing in the cold rain, the dried blood washing off her cloak, she could feel the fire in her chest burning hotter than ever. Danzo wanted to steal the tiger from her mountain. Her lips curved in a predator's smile. Her eyes sharpened like blades. Shimura Danzo, do you take me for a fool? Step. A ghostly figure emerged from the rain, boots striking through half a foot of sludge with hard, steady steps. One of Danzo's loyal Root operatives. A puppet dug up from a grave, his dead eyes swept over Tsunade's cold face, then fixed like poisoned needles on Ryo's back. His voice rasped like metal on stone. By order of Danzo-sama. Genin Kamiyama Ryo, report to the command tent. Immediately. The air froze. Only the rain kept falling. Nawaki and Makoto stiffened, forgetting to breathe. A killing intent so cold it seemed to freeze the air burst from Tsunade like a tidal wave. Boom. A visible shockwave erupted, blasting mud into a fan of spray. The Root operative's cloak snapped like a flag. In order. Tsunade stepped forward, mud shattering underfoot. In an instant, she was face to face with the pale Root agent. Her crimson cloak flared like fire. Her voice dropped, molten pressure boiling beneath it. Ryo is mine. She stepped closer. Instinct made the root agent recoil half a step, mud splashing at his boots. Tell him to crawl out here and say that to my face. Hiding in his little den, barking orders like a coward. If he loves hiding so much, he can crawl back into his mother's womb. The last word struck like a hammer. For a moment, fear flickered in the man's dead eyes, then vanished. He straightened again, rigid as a corpse. Tsunadesima, this is Danzo-sama's direct order. I only deliver it. He avoided her gaze and gestured stiffly toward Ryo. Genin Ryo, please. Phoom. Tsunade's cloak snapped upward like a banner of flame. The fire in her eyes wasn't sparks anymore, but shards of molten fury. The west wing of the camp turned ice cold, the air twisting with invisible heat. Shimura Danzo. To be continued. Hollow Diamond 1 bonus chapter will be released for every 200 power stones. Hollow Diamond. You can read the ahead chapter on pad if you're interested. Patreon.com/Blownleaves. Just remove the hyphen to access normally. Chapter 82. Danzo makes grand promises. Ryo stood on the training ground. Tsunade's fist was still hanging in midair, anger trembling through her like a volcano about to blow. Bloodshot eyes, voice squeezed out between her teeth. Ryo, what petty trick is that old viper up to now? Don't stop me. Let me go smash Danzo's office. She stamped her heel. A thin crack split the ground. She was Tsunadeheim, Konoha's princess, quick to flare and fierce to explode, especially where Danzo was concerned. He was always scheming in the dark, and lately he had been making a mess on the aim front. Just hearing it made her see red. Calm down, Tsunade. Ryo's hand settled lightly on her shoulder, steady and unmistakable. It wasn't that he couldn't block her punch. At his near-cage level, even if Tsunade went wild, he could defuse it. He just disliked trouble. Tsunade was a straight arrow. If she stormed in hot, it would only breed bigger problems. Go rest. I'll handle this. Tsunade glared toward Danzo's camp and growled low, but Ryo's eyes hit like a splash of ice water. She ground her teeth and let it go. In the end she exhaled and flicked her sleeve. Have it your way. But if Danzo plays dirty, I'll tear his root out by the stalk. She vanished into the trees, leaving Ryo alone. Silence rolled back over the training ground. The rain kept hammering down. Ryo rolled his neck. Time to pay Danzo a visit. Overdue. In a past life as a programmer, he had seen all the big company tricks, bosses drawing pie in the sky, shifting blame, sowing division. Call it what it is, corporate gaslighting. The shinobi world wasn't any different. Same game, new rappers. But Ryo wasn't here to play. He had the power. He didn't eat from anyone's hand. Observation hockey sharp as a knife, swordsmanship at a high tier, flying thunder god under his belt. Only his physical hardware lagged. Once his body caught up to awaken armament hockey, even Kuj class wouldn't necessarily be his match. He turned and set off. Danzo's post was a secret compound behind the main base, ringed by bamboo. Ryo didn't hurry, but every step bit solidly into the dirt. Tsunade's anger flickered through his mind. His resolve didn't. Tsunade was a friend. Ryo's rule was simple: stand alone, stand strong. Hirazen's high table games. Danzo's shadowhand recruiting. Not worth his eyes. Worst case, he would take Kushina and walk from Konoha, vanish into the mountains for a few years. With Flying Thunder God, the world was a blink wide. Half an hour later, the bamboo path ended at Danzo's hideaway. Not a shack, a carefully appointed washitsu with sliding doors, sound dampened so even insects seemed to hush. Two root operatives flanked the entrance, black-clad and masked, eyes cold on Ryo. He didn't break stride. One stepped out. This way. Danzo-sama has been waiting. Ryo glanced once, cold as a drawn edge. The man yielded half a step and held the door. Ryo slid it open. Incense coiled in the air, rich and oppressive, like a wake. Warm lamplight. Danzo sat at the head. The Nabekage of Konoha, the internet's fifth-hand half Hokage, actually made Ryo blink. Danzo was in his prime. Hair combed razor-neat, black garb crisp as iron, all limbs intact, no bandages blinding his eye, pupils hawk-sharp. Clearly, this was an earlier Danzo. He nodded faintly at Ryo, a thin smile tugging his mouth. Ryokan, sit. Low, magnetic voice. Hard-edged presence. Decent stagecraft, Ryo thought. Square face, tight thin lips, short beard, he wore the warlord look. Cool, steady, in control. Ryo smirked inwardly. Looks and aura. In his past life, the suits were sharp and the knives sharper. He dropped into a seat without ceremony. Danzo-sama, speak plainly. His gaze skimmed the room, maps lining the wall, a tasteful tea set on the table. Danzo wanted mystique. Ryo refused to play along. Danzo didn't flinch. He poured tea himself and passed a cup over, practiced and smooth. Hard work at the front. Tsunade's temper hasn't given you too much trouble, I hope. It sounded like concern. Ryo heard the angle, sowing discord. He took a sip. Tsunade is my teacher. You didn't summon me for small talk. Danzo's eyes narrowed with approval, aura ticking up a notch. Straight talk, I like that. He leaned in, voice dropping. But Konoha's situation, you see it as well as I do. Sarutobi Hiruzen postures is virtuous, but underneath he is soft. On the aim front his command leaks like a sieve. Do you know how many lives that has cost? I, as commander here, have grown root quickly. Coercion. Bribes. No, we are talking power. I have recruited elite from other villages and expanded enough to counter the elders. His cadence quickened. The tone turned rally speech. Sarutobi is a paper tiger. A talent like you, why follow him? Join Root, and your future, limitless. Ryo's face didn't move. Sky pie. He had seen it 1,000 times in conference rooms, execs hyping numbers, building fiefdoms, sweet-talking overtime. Danzo was the same. Tearing down the third. Cute. Hiruzen was still Hokage. Danzo was just the shadow hungry for the throne. Ryo drummed a slow finger on the table. Danzo shifted tactics at once. He leaned back, the voice turning weighty. Ryokan, you are strong. But there is one issue you cannot ignore. Kushina is a Jinchuriki. The tone cut cold. The other elders will oppose you too. Sarutobi will not risk his feathers for her. He will not let the Nine Tails become a scandal. He paused, then leaned in again, eyes like blades. But I am different. I have the will to clear your path. Root has strength. Stand with me, and I will move obstacles. Your matter with Kushina, I will press it through. Confidence sparked in his eyes. He had started to believe his own expansion, Root swelling fast under his command post. He had imagined it 100 times. Ryo joins him, Root power spikes, he squeezes Sarutobi, Hokage's seat, within reach. Ryo couldn't help a short, dry snort. Hot air, end to end with a side of threat, classic. Back when he coded for a living, bosses sold you glory, then crushed you with performance quotas. What could Danzo give? Fight for him. Train him. As for high-table politicking, he couldn't care less. He wasn't Orochimaru, neck-deep in forbidden labs. He had already struck his bargain with Hiruzen. Kushina's protection was a line in Ryo's terms. More importantly, any chips Danzo offered, resources, rank, Hiruzen could match. Why choose the black-gloved middleman? Silence stretched. Danzo's smile began to crack. Ryo stood. Lively speech, Danzo-sama. His voice was cool. But I don't lean on anyone. Kushina is my concern, not yours. As for other elders, any who come at me will learn manners from my blade. He met Danzo's eyes. Good day. He turned and walked out, without leaving a scrap of face. Danzo froze. All that set dressing, the mystic washitsu, the cultivated gravitas, wasted. The door slid back. Rain struck Ryo's face. Danzo managed, go safely, Ryokan, in a cultured tone that rang hollow. Ryo's back vanished into the downpour. Danzo's mask fell with it. He slammed the table. Porcelain shattered across the tatami. Ingrate. Veins jumped at his temple. If lure fails, suppress. Tsunade was the boy's teacher. Her faction was strong. A rogue nearing the cage line, and the Nine Tails Jinchuriki tied to her. Right now, Tsunade was the biggest stone in Danzo's path to the Hokage's seat. His mind spun gears. The front was full of knives. Could he not contrive a mission to eat Ryo alive? To be continued. 4 comments 0 vote. Chapter 83. Danzo's promises fall flat bonus. The rain fell without end, soaking Konoha's entire camp until it swelled and stank. The mud clung like glue. Every step lifted with a heavy squelch. Tsunade's face was set like frost. Her crimson cloak was drenched and dragged at her shoulders, but it could not press down the smoldering anger in her eyes. Nawaki slogged into a pit of sludge, coming up like he had been dredged from a swamp. His brand new Chunin vest had turned into a brown rag. He flicked muck from his arms, muttering curses at the weather and the tedium of patrol. Beside him, Makoto was as silent as a shadow. Rain slid from the black hair plastered to her cheek. Her empty gaze pierced the downpour, fixed on nothing. Ryo led the way. From the direction of the command tent, a Root operative glided in like a clay idol come to life. He cut through the rain and stopped squarely before Ryo. Tsunadesima, the monotone voice carried through the storm. by order of Danzo-sama, proceed to Defense Zone 2. Immediately. Defense Zone 2. Tsunade's voice rose, sharp as a blade scraping iron. That was where Hanzo's main force pressed hardest, a meat grinder. The toughest bone in the camp, and closest to death. Danzo could not wait to cast her into the hottest furnace. Are Orochimaru and the others taking losses? You want me to hold the line? The root ninja's face did not change. Lord Danzo believes your battlefield value should be exerted in a core sector. Core. To die would be closer to the mark. Tsunade's chest heaved with fury. Hypocritical on the surface, venomous beneath, she read him like glass. In my squad. Her tone turned cold enough to freeze. Your team lacks sufficient strength to enter that danger zone, the root agent droned. They will remain in camp to rest and await orders. This is Danzo-sama's strategic allocation. Strategic allocation. My ass. Tsunade nearly exploded. She knew it. Danzo was not sending her to the spear point for the sake of the core sector. He was severing her from Ryo and the others. The front was too hot. Tsunade had the might to carve her way out of the Amenan encirclement, but her squad. Ryo's power was uncanny, but could he stand against Hanzo's salamander and its poison? Nawaki and Makoto. They would be tender meat tossed into the grinder. Bring them, and one misstep meant no remains to retrieve. It was the cruelest daylight trap, forcing her to go alone. Without the she-beast guarding her cubs, Ryo, Nawaki, and Makoto, 3 little genin, would be declawed pups in a camp where Danzo's word was law. Any jonin, or even a chunin, hiding behind a command title could, under camp regulations, wartime orders, or some airy support assignment, legitimately move, exploit, even expend them. Rules are dead, people are alive, especially in wartime camps, where the lowest rank sits at the bottom of the food chain. Ninja obey orders by law. Refuse, and it is mutiny under wartime codes. Would any jonin risk offending a top medical ninja by harassing her disciples? Of course not. But not offending only meant surface politeness, not protection. They were still genin. Danzo could hold them in the palm of his hand. What he wanted was exactly this outward calm. Ryo was strong enough to clash with a sector commander. But would he dare? Would he dare cause a scene in camp? One step over the line, and Danzo had hats ready for his head, undermining morale, disrupting order, mutiny in wartime. Black or white, Danzo would call it. He hoped Ryo would make noise. The bigger the noise, the harder Danzo's fist could fall, righteous and by the book. As for penning Ryo in camp to rot. No, too wasteful, too small-minded. In the gloom of the command tent, Danzo's eyes gleamed with cold calculation. Kill Ryo now. Too costly, pointless. The land of Rain's bog needed a sharp blade like Ryo. That's strange. God knows where he learned its skill set, especially that terrifying swordwork tailor-made to shred puppets, was crucial to the balance of engagements. Killing him now would hurt Konoha and help the enemy, contrary to Danzo's sacred rule, all for Konoha, and for me to be Hokage. Use him. Squeeze him dry. Let that blade carve glory in the land of Rain. Let him earn enough merit that Danzo, crowned by talent spotting and grand strategy, could step over the corpses of Suna and aim to don the halo of Hokage. Then would be the time for the autumn reckoning. Before that, some knockdowns and attrition were essential. This proud blade had to learn whose hand moved the pieces. Understood. Tsunade ground out the word, teeth clenched, eyes carving a mark toward the command tent. Nawaki looked blank, still not grasping the implications. Makoto stayed silent, the emptiness in her eyes darkening. Ryo, beneath the hood's shadow, held a gaze like a deep, still pool, utterly calm. Danzo's order was a ripple skimming the surface. Here, Tsunade's voice rang ironhard, each word a nail hammered into command, protect yourselves. Keep your heads down. Don't give anyone an excuse. Wait for me to come back. Understood. She fixed Ryo with a long look, warning layered with something like trust, then said no more. Her crimson figure cut a decisive line through the rain, a blade drawn toward the slaughterhouse of Defense Zone 2. Mudburst flared where her steps fell. Nawaki gaped, then blurted, late to the dread, ah. He glanced from Ryo to the silent Makoto, confusion and panic fighting on his face. Without his sister, what now? The air in camp grew heavier. Those eyes in the shadows grew bolder. Ryo tugged at his rain-soaked hood and turned toward their cold, wet tent, as if nothing had happened. Not long after, another root messenger blocked the entrance. That same rigid mask of a face. Genin Kamiyama Ryo, Genin Senju Nawaki, Genin Uchiha Makoto, came the flat voice. Report to logistics immediately. Assist Supply Squad 3. Execute wartime transport assignment, Batch 7. Ensure safe delivery of supplies to the forward observation post at Eagle Hull Cliff. No delay permitted. Escort duty. Naoki's eyes lit up, like a hound finally catching a scent. Finally, real work. After days patrolling that swamp, his bones felt rusty. Escorting supplies. Fine, at least it was proper wartime duty. He cracked his knuckles. The fog of aimlessness blew away. Makoto's lashes lifted. She shot the root ninja a quick glance and lowered her eyes again, fingers rubbing the edge of her tool pouch. Escort mission. Leaving this suffocating camp, these prying eyes. She drew a quiet breath. The pressure seemed to ease, barely. Ryo leaned against the cold, damp tent pole, brim dipping lower. He could taste the faint malice in the air and its source. Donzo's pie had failed. The payback was prompt. Assist Supply Squad 3. They were the real muscle. No. He and Naoki, Makoto, the inserted executors Danzo had arranged. Eagle Howl Cliff. Ryo brought up the crude maps he had studied. A projecting height between the camp and the core battle zone, not the foremost trench, but a perilous perch, routinely harassed by Amenan infiltrators. Observation post or not, the workload was heavy, supply burn was high. Escort supplies. The task itself was fine. But the executors, 3 genin without a direct jonin leader, slotted into a seemingly full squad, 2 jonin plus 4 chunin plus 12 genin, counting them. In that formation, what were they? Who gave them orders? What roles would they shoulder? If something went wrong, who took the blame? Danzo meant them to run a gauntlet, bleed through fatigue and accidents on a dangerous route. The iron pot he handed them could not be dodged. It came with a wartime stamp. Got it. Ryo's voice cut through the rain, flat and unreadable. He straightened, rolled his neck. The vertebrae clicked softly. He stepped out first. The rain thickened. The mud closed on their ankles again. Naoki followed in high spirits, murmuring, finally something real. Eagle Howl Cliff, right, I hear the view's amazing. Chapter 84, Betrayed. Gray rain poured endlessly, turning the land of rain into a swamp. The Konoha Heavy Transport Unit Number 13 dragged forward through the mud like a dying beast, every step sinking deep. The mule's ribs stood out sharply, groaning as it struggled. The stench of decay filled every breath. Crates wrapped in oilcloth were piled high on the wagon, the unit's only hope. The march was silent. Faces numb. At the front, Tanaka Nobu and Odagiri Toshiya moved like statues, exhaustion dulling their eyes. 4 chunin wiped cold rain from their faces, their fingers stiff as stone. 12 genin followed behind, mud on their forehead protectors, uniforms soaked, hands shaking on their weapons. Fear crept over them like invisible frost. Clack. 3 figures in dark cloaks appeared through the rain, merging silently with the column. Water trickled down their forehead protectors. New arrivals. Tanaka barely looked up, his rough finger almost touching Ryo's nose. You and you, he pointed at Naoki, go behind the third wagon. And you, his tone sharpened as he eyed Naoki's new blade, fall back. 'Cause trouble and I'll flay your skin. Odagiri's cold voice followed. Trash sent to die. Don't expect to last long. Naoki's anger flared, face red, hand gripping his hilt. Makoto caught his arm and whispered, let it go. Ryo didn't react. Their insults were meaningless, like buzzing insects. He stepped into the mud pit Tanaka pointed out, the deepest and filthiest part. Mud rose to his calves, but he stood steady, rain sliding down his face. Naoki followed, his steps heavy, dragging through the muck. Frustration gnawed at him as he forced himself forward. He looked at Ryo. For an instant, a faint red light flickered in Ryo's eyes. His perception expanded. The direction of the rain, subtle tremors in the ground, the faintest heartbeats, every detail flooded into his mind. The world sharpened to deadly clarity. Naoki's heart seized. The forest was silent. Even the rain seemed to stop. Enemy. His warning was swallowed by the roar of an explosion. Boom. Flames burst, mud erupted, and shockwaves ripped through the convoy. Wagons splintered, the mule was torn apart, blood mixing with rain and smoke. Scatter. Odagiri's shout cut off midward. Peef. A dark blur swept across the ground. A curved blade flashed. A headless body flew into the air, blood painting the rain red. Kill them all. Take the supplies. A dozen Suna shinobi in dark cloaks leapt from the trees, blades gleaming. The ambush struck like lightning. Defend. Fight. Tanaka roared, hurling kunai, but 4 elite Suna shinobi surrounded him. Blades clashed, sparks flared. The genin screamed, falling one after another into the mud. Damn it. Naoki's eyes burned. He drew his sword and lunged forward. Don't move. Ryo's cold voice froze him. Naoki turned. Ryo's eyes were dark and still, like a beast ready to strike. Ryo moved. Speed beyond sight. By the time the afterimages faded, he was already before the first Suna shinobi. His kunai flashed once. A red dot appeared on the man's forehead. 8 Suna elites surrounding them froze. Each bore the same mark on their brow or throat. None even had time to bleed. Ryo stood back in place, calm, rain washing his blade clean. Naoki stared, speechless. 8 enemies gone in an instant. He hadn't even seen Ryo's hand move. Naoki, right side. Makoto's voice broke the silence. He turned just as the Suna captain, face painted in blue, lunged from where Odagiri's body lay. His poisoned blade sliced through the rain, aimed straight for Naoki's heart. Too fast to block. Naoki froze. Ryo moved again. With one step, the air split. The kusanagi sheath pierced the captain's throat, launching him backward. Bang! Crack! The body slammed into a tree, neck half severed, blood and rain spilling together. The kusanagi sheath quivered, humming faintly. Ryo twisted his wrist. The blade slid back into place with a quiet click. Tick, tick. Silence returned. Only the rain remained. Naoki trembled, his neck cold with the memory of death brushing past. The remaining Suna shinobi froze in terror. Their comrades had fallen before they could react. Panic overtook them. They screamed, threw smoke bombs, and fled into the forest, dropping weapons and armor. The rain's rhythm returned, steady and heavy. Makoto clutched her chest, her heart pounding wildly. The afterimage of Ryo's movement burned into her mind. Tanaka stumbled back, bloodied kunai in hand, armor torn. His gaze swept over the corpses, the red marks on their brows, the captain pinned to the tree. His body shook. That wasn't ninjutsu. It was pure speed and power, terrifyingly real. He remembered how he had mocked Ryo earlier. His gut turned cold. Naoki forced himself to breathe. His anger and pride were gone, crushed by the difference between them. He finally understood. Ryo's presence wasn't arrogance. It was the quiet confidence of a predator among prey. The survivors gathered shakily, their eyes filled with fear and awe. Those who had sneered before couldn't even look at him. Tanaka, someone whispered. Shut up. Stay back. Tanaka's voice trembled. Despite his wounds, his tone carried something close to reverence. Ryo ignored them. His eyes swept across the battlefield, then toward the misty horizon. He stepped forward, boots sinking into blood and mud. Let's go. His cold voice cut through the rain. He walked past a corpse, crushing its empty stare beneath his heel. Naoki stumbled after him. Makoto took a breath, forcing the chaos in her heart down, and followed. Ryo walked through the rain, calm and unmoved. Blood mixed with water, washing into the ground. Tanaka watched his back, the white cloak stained with blood, like a faint light in the storm. To be continued. 3 comments 0 vote. Chapter 85, 3 Nation Melee. Bonus. Rumble. The sky over the land of rain had split open. Endless sheets of water poured down, turning the land into a boiling swamp. A 3-man Konoha squad trudged out of the storm like Shira climbing from a pool of blood, step by step toward the main camp. At their head walked Ryo. His dark rain cloak clung tightly, outlining a lean, hard frame. His expression was unreadable, his eyes deep as an ancient well. The air around him, heavy with the scent of blood, felt cold enough to freeze the rain. His cloak was stained dark with dried and half-clotted crimson, some of it from their enemies, and some perhaps his own. Half a step behind came Naoki, stumbling, legs trembling. His brand-new Chunin vest had lost all color, now caked with mud, blood, and grass. His face was pale, lips bluish, eyes vacant as he muttered to himself, 6, 7, damn it, they just keep coming. A little farther back walked Makoto. She still tried to carry herself with a trace of composure, but her eyes were hollow, her pride ground down by the weight of reality. She moved silently, knuckles white on the handle of her kunai. They had just crawled out of a cursed place known as Wailing Gorge. And Shrank escort mission, personally assigned, by Danzo, to deliver a batch of special antiserum effective against salamander venom, along with strategic scrolls, through a kill zone claimed by both AIM and Suna. The result? Mission accomplished. The price? Enough to break any sane mind. Barely 10 kilometers from camp, the first ambush came, 3 veteran Jonin leading a Chunin platoon from Suna. Their plan was simple, crush the escort and seize the supplies. What greeted them was Ryo's blade. A flash of light too fast to follow. Naoki saw only a cold gleam before heads flew skyward, blood streaking through the rain. The elite of Sunagakur never even finished their grins before terror froze their faces. Naoki's blood surged, his hand shooting for his sword, but Ryo's glacial voice stopped him. Watch. Then came 3 days of nightmare. Traps everywhere, poison mist drifting through the gorge, Rain's puppet squads striking from the shadows, Suna elites attacking in waves. Every victory brought another assault. How many times did Naoki think he was dead? He lost count. Mud sucking at his legs as a Suna kunai lunged for his chest, a poisoned blade grazing his throat, 3 Amenen cornering him on a narrow ledge. And every time, that figure appeared. Swift as a shadow, unshaken by chaos. The Kusanagi would flash, knocking away killing strikes by a hair's breadth, or Ryo would step between blows with impossible precision, ending 2 lives in the same instant. Naoki could only watch, stunned. No wasted motion, no flair, only pure efficiency. Draw, thrust, cut, advance. Movements beyond normal reaction, pure killing instinct refined to perfection. Not ninjutsu, but body and mind honed past human limits. His worldview shattered. Jonin. Technique. All meaningless against Ryo's speed. The Senju blood he'd been proud of, his new rank, all crushed to dust. He finally understood what a real difference in class meant. He wasn't a hero, just a burden Ryo had to keep protecting. Makoto fared no better. She clung to her Uchiha pride, activating her Sharingan, weaving signs, reading movement. But every time her eyes caught an enemy's attack, Ryo had already ended it before she could react. Against his speed, even her pupil power felt useless. The gorge was a purgatory of shredded limbs, mangled bodies, and blood mixing with rain. Each time Ryo stepped past a corpse he had just cut down, the wound still gushing, an eye bursting under his heel, Makoto's heart twisted between fear, awe, and something darker she couldn't name. Was this really the quiet boy from the academy, the one who once seemed invisible? 3 people forced their way through Wailing Gorge. Mission completion. 100%. Supplies delivered intact. The cost? Naoki's spirit fractured, mind on the edge of collapse. Makoto's pride crushed beneath the weight of war. And Ryo, soaked in blood, unchanged. To him, this was normal. The main camp loomed ahead, a muddy square lined with broken barricades and stretcher tracks. Sentries straightened when they saw the 3 figures approach, fear and awe flickering in their eyes. Their name had already spread through the ranks, the Shira Squad. Their leader, Ryo, whispered of as the Blade. Their tent stood in a cold, damp corner of camp. Naoki stumbled inside and collapsed onto a cot, half dead. Makoto sat down, wordless, wiping her weapons with mechanical precision. Ryo didn't sit. He pushed back his hood, rain dripping from his red hair, dried blood streaking his face. He stood at the tent flap, gaze fixed on the storm outside, his thoughts elsewhere. Main command tent, camp center. The air was thick and heavy. Incense smoke drifted through the damp canvas. By lamplight, Danzo's face was half buried in shadow. A faint gleam lit his single eye as he studied a map. TCH. He clicked his tongue. A masked root operative appeared and bowed, handing him a bloodstained report. Danzo read quickly. 2 Suna Jonin dead, 6 Chunin eliminated, 4 AIM puppet squads destroyed, supplies delivered intact. HMPH. As expected. His lips curved faintly, satisfaction mixing with wariness. Ryo's sharpness had surpassed all estimates. For days, Danzo had worked the team like beasts of burden, sending them on suicidal assignments, deep raids, infiltration strikes, high-risk ambushes. Yet every time, they returned covered in blood but victorious. Each success added weight to Danzo's calculations. The Kusanagi's power, Ryo's monstrous instincts, his unmatched killing efficiency, all perfect for the battlefield of AIM. As long as he kept that knife in hand and let it cut down enemies for him, Danzo's ambitions could continue to rise. The problem was simple. The knife was too sharp, and it refused to obey. He remembered that meeting, days ago. His carefully prepared setting, his rhetoric, his authority, all dismissed with a single cold line. I'll handle it myself. Anyone who gets in my way, I'll cut. Even now, Danzo could still feel the chill of that gaze. In that instant, he had known Ryo could kill him without hesitation. Genius or monster, he muttered. Either way, a blade that won't bend is a threat. Still, not one he could afford to break yet. He sealed the payout for Ryo's squad without deduction, even marking it a rank. Not out of generosity. He knew if he skimmed a single coin, Ryo would storm the tent with his sword to discuss payment. The boy's greed for mission rewards matched his skill in killing. Best not to provoke him over money. There were subtler ways to control him later. Danzo-sama. Front line, urgent. A drenched messenger burst in, panting hard. Emergency. Encrypted Anbu signal from B7 high ground. Orochimaru-sama requests immediate support. Explain. Who sent it? What's the situation? Danzo snapped. The runner gasped out, signal confirmed. Jiraiya, Orochimaru, and Tsunade, joint distress call. Large-scale Iwa ambush. They're surrounded on 3 fronts, with massive rock-type summons in play. Iwanan. A strategist exclaimed. How did they get through undetected? Danzo's face hardened. So that was it. Iwa had stayed quiet at their border, biding time, shifting elites into aim. Waiting until Konoha and Suna were exhausted, then stabbing straight for the heart. This was no longer Konoha versus aim, or Konoha versus Suna. It was a 3-way slaughter, Konoha, Suna, and Iwa tearing aim apart and each other with it. Hanzo of Omegakure, the so-called demigod, had long since fallen from his pedestal. His salamander venom and lone power meant nothing now. All he could do was cling to survival and drive the invaders from what was left of his land. The board was chaos. Konoha and Suna tore at each other publicly while secretly fighting to control aim. Suna wanted a path into Fire Country, and Konoha wanted to stop them. Aim, trapped in the middle, fought back with poison, ambush, and desperation. And now Iwa had entered the field with one goal: kill the legendary 3 and cripple Konoha's morale. Useless, all of you. Danzo slammed his hand on the table, wood creaking. An Iwa force big enough to trap the 3, en route didn't see it coming. His mind raced. Orochimaru's unit pinned, the front collapsing. Reinforcements from Fire Country were days away. Camp reserves, too weak. Then a single name cut through his thoughts like a blade. His gaze turned toward the camp's edge. There was only one person who could cut through Iwa's ring and bring the 3 back alive. A monster. Orders. Danzo's voice sliced through the tent. Level 3 emergency protocol. His eyes swept across the room, sharp and cold. Ryo squad, to the command tent. Now. He paused, a crooked smile twisting his lips. Main camp, full mobilization. Target. B7 cliff. The 3 are pinned. Ryo squad leads the charge. 10 minutes to departure. Bring Tsunade, Orochimaru, and Jiraiya back alive. The camp erupted. Back in the outer tents, Naoki startled at the sudden alarm, nearly falling from his cot. What's happening now? Ryo stood unmoving at the flap. When Danzo's order echoed through the camp, something flickered in his eyes. B7. Iwa. He lowered his head, rain dripping from his bangs. After a long moment, he lifted it again, his expression carved from stone. His hand tightened on the Kusanagi's hilt. Stay here, he said quietly. I'll go cut. The last word fell heavy in the air. Chapter 86. The 3 in despair. The rain continued to fall, endless and merciless. The air was thick with the stench of blood, smoke, and rotting earth. Ryo's silhouette tore through the storm, a red spear thrown toward the depths of hell. B7 high ground. Mud, shattered rock, broken weapons, and pools of dark, congealed blood painted the field. The air still tingled with the residue of explosions and the clash of chakra that made the skin crawl. Behind him, Konoha's reinforcements struggled through the mud, their shouts echoing. But Ryo's inhuman speed left them far behind, only splashes of muddy spray marking his path. Emergency rescue. No. Ryo trusted only his blade. Bringing Makoto and Naoki would only slow him down. They would be liabilities. Now, speed meant survival. Beneath the cliff at B7, the mouth of a hidden cave exhaled damp, heavy air that pressed down like a weight. Outside, the rain hammered against stone and earth in an endless roar, smothering the distant battle where death reigned. Inside, a few weak strands of light seeped through the cracks, revealing 3 fading figures. Tsunade knelt on one knee. Her golden hair clung to her blood-drained face, her cloak torn to ribbons that revealed wounds deep enough to show bone. Rain-tinged blood trickled from them in steady lines. She had nearly burned out her chakra with medical ninjutsu. Each circulation through her meridians stabbed like needles, scraping her soul raw. Ignoring her own pain, she forced the last of her chakra into her trembling hands, pressing them against Jiraiya's head. His brain beneath her palms was the final line she refused to lose. The pale green glow of medical chakra flickered weakly, like a candle guttering in the dark, fragile but stubbornly holding on to the last trace of Jiraiya's life. Jiraiya lay sprawled on the cold, wet stone. His once white hair was matted with blood and mud. His powerful body had become a broken husk riddled with mortal wounds. The worst was the gaping hole in his side, as if an unseen hand had torn it open, his organs exposed to the air. Each shallow breath bubbled with blood at his lips. Pain had numbed him, leaving only a faint, exhausted smile. Hey, Tsunade, save your strength, his voice rasped weakly. 18 broken bones, lungs, pierced too, what's the point? He tried to grin, but only managed a twitch. Hey, feel a little bad for my student, Minato, told him I'd teach him the Mount Myoboku summoning, guess that's off. Shut up. Tsunade's voice cracked, raw and shaking. Sweat rolled from her jaw and fell onto Jiraiya's face, mixing with blood. Save your breath to live. You're not dying here, Jiraiya. You hear me? Jiraiya coughed violently, blood spilling from his mouth and wounds. Tsunade bit her lip hard, forcing one more flicker of chakra from her exhausted body, veins bulging as she pulled him back for another heartbeat from death. His skin turned gray, his gaze drifting toward the ceiling. Let it go, dying in front of you, not the worst way to go. His eyes moved to the shadow where Orochimaru stood. Orochimaru was in better shape, but barely. His pale face was smeared with blood and grime, golden slit pupils cold and calculating. His left arm hung limp, but he could still stand. Orochi, Maru, Jiraiya's whisper barely carried. Be reasonable, don't be sentimental. Orochimaru's throat moved once. His eyes locked on Jiraiya's ruined face, and whatever warmth was left in them died. Only logic remained. He's right, Tsunade, Orochimaru said coldly. Any movement will finish him. Carry him, and we all die. Leave him, and two of us might live. He stepped forward. A kunai slid silently into his hand, its steel glinting faintly in the darkness. The light stabbed into Tsunade's eyes. Cut clean. Orochimaru's voice didn't waver. Jiraiya knows what this means. It's his last dignity. And the only one we can give him. The kunai leveled over Jiraiya's heart. Dignity, my ass. Tsunade screamed, voice raw with grief and fury. Her golden eyes burned red with veins, her face contorted in pain and rage. The medical chakra in her hands faltered as her body trembled, the faint light breaking apart. Orochimaru said flatly. Which is why you should understand. Stay, and we die. Carry him, 3 die. End it, and 2 live. His hand moved, the kunai darting for Jiraiya's chest with a viper's precision. At the last moment, Tsunade's snarl tore through the cave. Over my dead body. Her broken body moved before thought, driven by pure will. Chakra, long dry, erupted one final time from the depths of her life force, ignited by her instinct to protect. Her golden hair whipped through the air as she hurled herself between the blade and Jiraiya. She didn't block it with her body. She guided it, forcing her arm directly into the kunai's path. SHHK. The kunai punched through her forearm, through an old, half-held wound. Blood burst out in a hot spray. It splattered across Orochimaru's face, freezing him in shock. A few drops hit his eyes, steaming against his skin. More blood dripped down, striking Jiraiya's pale face below. For a moment, time stopped. Outside, shouts broke through the storm. Movement. Over here, quick. Orochimaru's kunai arm trembled. The sight before him, a comrade's blood dripping down his blade, stilled even his cold logic for an instant. He felt it. The tremor in his arm. The raw, reckless power of Tsunade's choice, burning her life away for one impossible act of defiance. Drip. Drip. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, Tsunade's ragged growls of pain mixed with Jiraiya's faint, rattling breath. The shouts of Iwanan drew closer, their armor clattering, boots squelching in the mud. The vines at the cave's mouth trembled. Orochimaru's shock hardened into deadly calm. His eyes darted from the kunai through Tsunade's arm, to Jiraiya beneath her, to the cave mouth about to be torn open. Countless thoughts collided in his mind, each one cutting deeper than the last. Tsunade's body shook violently, blood streaming from her arm and dripping onto Jiraiya's cold face. Her hair hung in clumped gold strands, slick with blood and sweat. Jiraiya's pupils strained to focus. Tsunade's face was only inches from his own, her pain carved into her every line, her blood spilling for him. He tried to speak, but no words came. Only a broken rattle escaped his throat. A faint smile twisted his lips, half sorrow, half resignation. Despair filled the cave. Outside, the vines suddenly tore apart with a sharp rip. Chapter 87. The red-haired monster comes to the rescue. Boom. Savage force tore the flimsy camouflage from the cave mouth. In the thin moonlight, the entrance snapped into cruel relief. Iwa forehead protectors glinted with rain. Countless greedy eyes burned through the downpour and locked onto the prey inside, the the legendary three of Konoha, three bodies slashed and battered, hanging by a thread. The leading Iwa Jonin stepped forward. A blood-smeared metal bracer lifted, the kunai in his grip sliced the silence. Hey! Konoha's Sanin. They're just, rip. An anomaly. A dark crimson meteor, beyond sight's limit, like blood lightning fallen from the ninth heaven, smashed into the tight Iwa formation. Krakoom. A shock blast roared out, braided with the crack of bones and the shriek of twisting steel. The 7 or 8 Iwa at the very front took the hit like a millionton hammer to the face. Terror froze on them as their bodies turned to ragdolls, hurled backward without the slightest resistance. Splut. 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 Scarlet blossoms burst in the cold rain, death's red lotus. The aftershock slammed the side walls. Rocks tumbled and rattled, mixing with mud and blood into a single, viscous smear. Crimson. In an instant, the Iwa vision filled with searing scarlet. Time seemed to clot with the raindrops. From the core of the soul, cold dread clutched every Iwa heart. Fear, like liquid mercury, rushed through limbs and marrow. Weaker Chunin collapsed outright. Weapons fell from numb hands. Bodies shook like leaves. At ground zero, where a killing void had been wrenched open, steam boiled up and veiled the world. A figure took shape within the haze, blurred to sharp. Red hair. Sopping, flame-bright red hair, like fire in the rain. He crouched low, one knee bent, on mud slicked with blood. Under his feet the ground had caved in with a spiderweb of fractures. A battered white rain cloak clung to a lean frame coiled with force, stained deep with blood. He rose. Straight as a spear. Rain slid from a jaw cut like a blade. Neither steam nor pounding rain could blunt the cold light in those long, narrow eyes. They aimed with unerring precision at the back of the cave, at the gold-haired woman shielding 2 comrades with her own body, swaying like a candle in a gale. A thin, icy snort, like a knife scraping frozen earth, cut the lull and struck Tsunade's ear. Turned yourself into sludge again, crazy woman. Tsunade jerked her head up, burning the last scraps of strength to focus on a silhouette that should not be there. Shock snapped through her frayed nerves. Then came the sting of being seen through, and a surge of shame and fury. Even now this brat still had jokes. Idiot brat. Trying to die. She rasped. Her breath heaved from a body bled dry of chakra. Every word snapped, half in rage, yet under it, a small tremor of relief. He came alone. Mad. The words jammed in her throat and tore out as a snarl. Can't you see someone's dying? In the shadows, Orochimaru's pupils cinched to slits. The serpent's gaze locked on Ryo in the rain, then snapped to the ancient blade at his hip, that unmistakable hilt. Kusanagi. So, it's in your hands, a strangled hiss rasped in his throat. Fingers widened around his kunai, a strange light quivered in his eyes. Hey, no wonder. On the other side, Jiraiya pried his eyelids open as if iron weights hung from them. Through the smear of blood and rain, he saw the bright red at the cave's mouth. His blown pupils struggled to focus. Ard, red-haired kid, KHH, his split lips twitched. Blood foamed, choking off words. Minato, that punk always said, a monster, hey. Shut it. Idiot. Don't waste air. Tsunade's roar almost shattered his chest. At the same instant, she caught it at the corner of her eye, 3 flecks of cold light flaring in the dark beyond the vines. 3 poisoned streaks, angles wicked beyond belief, vipers through the rain, arrowing for the cave mouth. Target, Ryo. A kill shot loosed from cover in the chaos. A soft, contemptuous breath, so faint it barely existed, still made every Iwa hair stand on end. Ryo blurred, then wasn't there. No chakra flare. Pure speed that seemed to rip space. Only torn rain remained as an afterimage. 3 tiny spurts of blood popped at 3 separate points, the outer ring of the Iwa formation. The 3 Iwa Jonin, arms cocked for another throw, froze mid-motion, eyes locked in disbelief. A neat, pin-round hole opened at each brow's center. Smooth. Circular. Not a drop wasted. As if death itself had tapped them with a needle. The bodies fell backward without a sound and sank into the red mud. The next instant, Ryo stood where he had begun again, like he had never moved. He tilted his head as if brushing off dust. Breathing calm. His eyes slid across the huge Iwa host already shuddering into panic. No contempt, only a chill absence. As if nothing stood there at all. A quick scan, blurred ranks upon ranks in the rain, a sea of bodies. More than a dozen elite Jonin chakra signatures, lighthouse bright in the dark, mingled among hundreds of killing-hungry Chunin and thousands of hollow-eyed genin smothered by fear. A colossal blood mill. Without looking back, Ryo spoke. Take the 2 dead weights behind you and fall back. Kill him. Rip him apart. A shrill, shamed bellow blew from the rear, Commander Akagan. Veins bulged in his gaunt face, spittle flew. He slammed a hidden control beneath his heavy vambrace and shrieked, spatial lock barrier, full power. Seal and suppress. Let's see you summon your big frogs and snakes now. Grind him down. If we must, we'll bury him in bodies. Boom. Crushing pressure rolled out. Space congealed. Raindrops grew heavy and slow, even their impacts dulled. The whole cliff locked beneath a vast, glass-clear dome, isolating the zone. All spatial techniques, summons, flying thunder god, smothered dead. Earth release. Multiple Earth-style wall. Around Akagan, a dozen veteran Iowa elite Jonin roared in unison, moving as one. Their chakra poured out like floodgates blown. Boom. Boom boom boom. The world howled. The ground bellowed. A dozen titanic earth walls, mountain thick and 10 stories high, ripped upward from the wet ground, caging the cave mouth and the patch where Ryo stood, blocking all light and exits. Not enough. The kill followed. Earth release. Earth dragon bullets. Wind release. Great breakthrough. Combination technique. Rock thousand burst burial. The shouts fused into a tide of ruin. Iowa's killing intent went white hot. The earth rolled and bucked. Stone dragons tore from the rising walls, maws yawning, force enough to grind anything to grit, lunging for the intruder. Wind screamed inside the sealed space, shredded into a storm of knife-edge blades, slicing and flensing. Air's shriek became a tight, hellish whistle. Worst was the combo, a blizzard of razor stone shards, each boosted by the gale to terminal speed, countless as the rain, fast as meteors, each carrying steel-piercing force. A sky of killing hail came down to erase everything inside. Wind, stone, rain, earth, poison, death. Within the 10-story walls, a prison of total annihilation bloomed. A storm of destruction and a smothering radiance swallowed all, fixed on a single aim, grind the red-haired figure, along with that troublesome cave mouth, into dust. The walls swallowed every glimmer of light. Only lightning-like flickers strobed like demons on a mural, while the rain's hiss turned into a tight, suffocating roar inside the sealed void. An absolute kill zone. In the storm, Ryo's silhouette seemed about to vanish in grit and glare, when a streak of blood red cut the dark. The barrier shuddered. Akagan howled, he can't. To be continued. 5 comments 0 vote. Chapter 88, Split the Battlefield bonus. At the heart of the storm, Ryo slowly closed his eyes. Rain drummed against his blood-streaked face and dripped onto the kusanagi in his hands. VMM. A soundless ripple spread from him. Observation haki, on. Perception surged out like a tide. Inside the sealed killing cage, every wind blade's path, every stone flechette's fall line, each earth dragon's impact core, even the faces of Iowa shinobi crouched along the walls and the killing intent in their eyes, all etched into his mind as a single, crystalline map. Time seemed to slow against that map. Data cascaded through his head, lethal trajectories, power nodes, hairline seams, all of it laid bare. An instant before the airtight barrage could swallow him whole, Ryo's eyes snapped open. In the dark red depths, a soul-cutting gleam flashed, the edge only a top swordmaster holds. His wrist turned once. Kusanagi thrummed, low and eager. Dark red light ran along the black blade like a living thing. A formless, soul-freezing sharpness spiked into the air. He moved. Not back. Not aside. Forward. Straight into the sky-blotting hail of rock and wind. Straight into the roaring stone dragons and the poisoned hurricane of blades. The ground burst under his feet, a crater meters wide. His body became a dark red streak that seemed to rip space. Sword art. Cutting current. Kusanagi traced a supremely subtle arc. No gaudy light. No bloated shockwave. Only the knife-keen scream of steel shearing air. Where the edge pointed, high-speed stone shot, hard enough to punch plate steel, met an invisible, slick wall. Chatch. An unbroken rattle of fractures. Not smashed by brute force, but deflected like nails striking a spinning grindstone. Some pinged into the cliffs, most shredded to dust in the blade's spiraling wake, bursting into white plumes before him. His pace did not change. Sword art. Piercing gale. A slight shift, and the thickest wind blade burst like a pricked bubble, like red-hot steel needling brittle ice. It let out a tearing wail and collapsed. The storm unraveled. A simple point thrust, distilled from 10,000 drills, found the seam and turned a wall into air. Ryo slipped like a butterfly through flowers, flashing onward through the net of strikes. Observation haki put every impact a beat ahead. Sword instinct picked the cheapest path through. Every cut exact. No waste. Combat honed to the bone. But the barrage was too dense. Saturation smothers skill. Boom. A stone dragon, massive and close, finally met him in a line he could not dodge. Hard light flickered in Ryo's eyes. Sword art. Rockbreaker. His line changed. No more cutting and guiding, only raw force. Muscle corded. Power climbed the spine and shoulder and poured into the edge. Kusanagi came down like a siege maul. A deafening crack. Impact condensed into an unseen hammer that smashed the dragon's reinforced snout. Harder than steel, the stone head sheared away in a slab, like half a hill blasted off. Shrapnel screamed backward. But the beast's momentum was immense. The shock tore through Ryo's bones and into the ground, exploding more stone beneath his boots. He held, stole recoil, and twisted. SHHK. Skirt. Two poisoned shuriken hissed past. One buried in the wall. The other nicked his left arm, carving a deep line. Pain. Numbness crept in. HN. He grunted. No flinch. A scratch. His recovery already tugged muscle toward closure. His target, the breakpoint, was clear. He could not stop. In this grinder, stopping is dying. He drove again, an unbowed red lotus, boring a path through the storm meant to crush all things. Steel against stone. Steel against wind. Steel against venom. Sparks blew. Rock burst. Needles pinged off. The cloak shredded. Fresh blood striped his skin. His speed only built, momentum piling high. On the rearmost, highest wall, Commander Akagan fixed on that dark red figure climbing upstream through annihilation, terror rising in his hawk eyes. That power. That speed. That foresight. To charge through a storm like this, monster. But he saw the rents in Ryo's cloak. The blood. The poisoned cut. Hope rekindled. Not enough. More. He's hit. Press. Wear him down. Akagan howled, flinging his arm, hysteria glittering in his stare. Drown him with bodies. Pile it on. Even monsters tire. Even monsters bleed. The Iowa line, cowed for a breath, shrieked back into motion under the whip. More formations, tighter combos, everything thrown to drown that red advance. And then, as Akagan's roar still rang, as hands began to shape new signs, at the storm's core, the steam-wreathed spear of a man, cut and bloodied, yet upright as a pike, stopped. He killed his forward rush. Both hands closed on Kusanagi. His stance sank. A pressure like the breath before a volcano burst spread over the field. Even the downpour seemed to falter. Up on the wall, Akagan's heart lurched. Ryo's head snapped up. Those dark red eyes burned through stone dust and rain, across dozens of meters, past ranks of Iowa, like a scope zeroing in, on Akagan. Killing intent, cold as a lance of ice, hammered through the commander's soul. A wave of doom froze his blood. He tried to scream. Too late. Ryo moved. Not a sprint. A basic, unadorned bowstep cleave. Every muscle fiber fired. Every cell's charge twisted into a single cable. Waist, spine, shoulder, wrist, perfect transfer. Hip, leg, arm, blade. One line. Through. Detonate. Flying slash. Dark red did not flow this time, it erupted. A sword light dozens of meters long, tight as if cast from frozen fire and pure edge, lanced off Kusanagi's tip. No world-splitting boom. Only a shriek that stabbed the eardrum and seemed to split the soul. Not steel ripping air, space itself crying as it tore. It punched through everything in front of it. Rip-trip-tripped. A machine gun snarl of cuts hit almost at once. Heavy earth bulwarks, stone spines, met red-hot knife to butter, gone. A thick wall, brittle tofu under a chef's blade, bisected, the cut face smooth as a mirror. Layered walls, paper. 1, 2, 3, perforated in a blink. Ninja still midsign behind them never finished. Sword wind's fringe brushed across them, bodies parted like a butcher's demo, upper halves atomized into rain, lower halves left standing. In the slash's wake, a vacuum tunnel more than 3 meters across carved the battlefield. Anything on that line, panicked casters, slow summons, turned to powder. Sight down the channel showed a straight road of ruin, blood and crushed stone, leading to Akagan's perch. Only the thudding growl of air slamming shut in the cut's track remained. Akagan watched the dark red line of death widen in his pupils, the distance gone as if space bent. Terror broke his paralysis at last. He dropped his last card. Earth release. Rock shelter. The ground writhed. A suffocating mass of bedrock rose and layered over him, compacting into a coffin of stone, the strongest defense his chakra could buy. The fortress had barely sealed when the blade arrived. One sound, smaller, keener, more terrible than any before. No bombast. No quake. The red slash paused, barely, and slid into the heart of the shell. Like a hot brand through tallow, no resistance. Akagen's bastion meant nothing. The light sheared the final layer, and cut Akagen in two, clean and center, hands frozen mid-sign. Halved. Gu, ah, nno, way. The two pieces snapped backward under brutal force, splatting against the wall with a bone-deep thud. Blood sheeted from the seam, painting rock in his twisted face. Bulging eyes locked on the figure out in the rain, now swaying on his feet, with a terror that dragged him toward the pit. His mouth worked. No sound came. One sword. Split the field. Pierced the bulwark. Halved the commander. Ruthless. Absolute. Silence fell for a heartbeat. Every Aiwa who saw it stood dumbstruck, eyes bulging. A moment ago Lord Akagen had whipped them back from collapse. The next, he was meat stapled to a cliff. Ice water poured through their chests. Akagen-sama, is he dead? A Genin's kunai fell into the mud with a plop. Monster, devil. A Chunin stammered, stumbling back. Kill him, kill that monster, avenge Akagen-sama. The adjutant screamed, veins jumping, grief curdling into hysteria. Don't let him reach the core. Hold him. Kill him. For Akagen-sama. Shame and horror fused into a warped savagery, one last flare before morale died. Surviving Jonin, Chunin, and Genin wheeled as one, threw formation and guard away, and hurled themselves like ants into a brazier, every tool and technique used to stop the stagger in that redlit stride. Fwoosh. Fire jetted, scorching the rain. Shkashakashk. Wind blades buzzed like locusts. Thud thud thud. Stone boulders screamed overhead. Shuriken swarmed in a lattice that covered every escape line. One goal, bar Ryo from the spatial core. Ryo's step hit heavy. Kusanagi's tip punched into the ground to brace him. The edges of his vision blackened. Each breath rasped like tearing cloth, organs complaining after overdraw. Numbness from poison crawled down his left arm, a million cold needles stirring bone. Yet through the rain, observation hockey burned a clear vector. There, a hidden hollow behind the southeastern earth wall. A subtle, hateful pulse radiated from it, cuffing the cliff's space like invisible manacles. Each wave carried a sticky drag, like thickened air. Target locked. The core, his cracked lips glistened with rain. Two words ground out like steel on steel. Destroy it, or Tsunade, the others, and he were dead. Dark red fire still burned in his eyes. He wrenched the blade free and duck. A wind shuriken as thick as a barrel screamed past his back. The vortex chewed a yard of wall to rubble. The blast peppered his spine with debris and buckled him to a knee. From shadow on his rear flank, an eagle-faced Aiwa elite Jonin burst out, palms cupping two high-speed, gray-white chakra spheres whining like hornets. He slammed his hands together. The spheres fused and ballooned into a twimeter vortex, tearing stone to grit as it dropped toward Ryo. Air twisted under the pull. A point-blank kill. Ryo could smell the earth stink on the man. No room to dodge. At that same beat, left and front, two more chakra flares. To the left, a pair of seasoned Chunin leaders stabbed stone spear from the ground, razor lances angling for Ryo's legs. In front, another elite Jonin howled, wind release, great wind cutter. Up, down, left, right, death box. Chapter 89, want to kill me. Can't dodge it. Then break through it. Ryo's objective was absolutely clear, destroy the sealing core. Only by destroying the prison that bound the space could the flying thunder god coordinates he left behind be relocated. Counting on reinforcements from Konoha to arrive at some unknown time. That was never an option. Your life can only be held in your own hands. Muscle fibers pushed to their limits screamed in pain as overwhelming strength surged through them. He planted both feet with explosive force, like two red-hot iron nails driven deep into the cracked, shattered earth, sinking a full foot down. The muscles in his right arm gripping the sword coiled like a steel python. The Kusanagi sword seemed to sense its master's raging murderous intent and unbreakable resolve, emitting a low, sanguine hum. Sword technique. Mountain Sunderer. His wrist vibrated at a speed invisible to the naked eye. The Kusanagi sword turned into a crimson arc tearing through the rain. Compressed force gathered along the blade, rending the air with a piercing shriek. Bang! Boom! A thunderous explosion shook the battlefield. That rampaging earth-release vortex, devouring flesh and crushing rock, collided with Yamikitsu's half-suppressed King Chakra tornado. The shockwave burst outward, flinging debris everywhere. Poo poo poo. Ah! Screams of agony tore through the rain. Aiwa shinobi who had charged forward laughingly were shredded before they could react, their bodies turned into sieves of blood. The price. Pain exploded in his left shoulder. An invisible wind blade, great wind cut, struck at the moment his old strength faded and his new power had yet to rise, brutally tearing through flesh and bone. Blood sprayed like a high-pressure jet. The blade also slashed through his trouser leg. The toxin's paralysis intensified, like 10,000 ants gnawing at his heart, assaulting his nerves. His altered physiology forced his torn muscles to contract shut. Taking advantage of the shockwave from his slash, Ryo's body spun like a steel gyroscope, twisting in defiance of physical law. Shra! His trouser leg ripped open. Deep gashes revealing bone appeared on the outside of his thigh. Blood gushed in torrents, dyeing the mud red beneath his feet. A kunai grazed his ankle by mere millimeters. Poison surged through his body. With every violent movement and loss of blood, the venom that had been suppressed by the Kusanagi sword spread like bone-deep frost. An Iwa shinobi in front of him froze in terror, his guts twisting. Wind cut and earth sting, and he's still moving. Impossible, is he a monster? Blood vessels throbbed across Ryo's chest. Stop that monster. At all costs. At the cave entrance, Tsunade bit her lip hard, her knuckles white. As a medical ninja, she knew better than anyone how fatal those wounds were. A shoulder torn to the bone, thigh flesh ripped apart, spreading poison, gushing blood. Under normal circumstances, no one could survive that. Yet she watched that blood-soaked figure charge through the storm, and memories of their last sparring match surfaced. She had known this day would come, the day he surpassed her, but witnessing it filled her with helpless awe. Orochimaru's golden eyes glinted coldly. His serpent-like tongue licked his lips as the Iwa shinobi retreated. His gaze locked greedily onto Ryo, whose blood-drenched figure cut through the rain. His muscles strained under each crushing blow. Even as poison and blood loss dragged him toward collapse, his eyes grew sharper, wilder. Like a lone wolf cornered, he pushed forward. The core was just ahead. The Kusanagi sword in his grip had become a streak of red lightning. He shed all excess movement, leaving only pure, lethal intent. Sword technique. Piercing wind. A foundational sword art pushed to perfection. Every block was flawless. Every stab struck at a vital point. Kunai, shuriken, small-scale water and fire jutsu, everything in his path was deflected or slashed apart. Guided by his sensory perception, he weaved through storms of jutsu and blades. Mud and blood exploded beneath his feet. Afterimages trailed behind him like phantoms. Pooh! Pooh! 3 Iwa shinobi fell with their throats pierced, clutching their necks as they collapsed. Stop him. Use your lives to block him. The adjutant screamed, his voice cracking. Ryo's target was clear, the core. They couldn't let him reach it. A few elite jonin exchanged glances, their resolve hardening. If ranged attacks failed, they would crush him in close combat. Use corpses as a wall to bury him alive. Earth release. Rock fist technique. Earth release. Weighted rock technique. They launched pincer attacks from both sides. Rock fists as heavy as mountains slammed down, the ground caving beneath their weight. The air grew thick with pressure, locking Ryo in place. Get out! Ryo roared like a beast. The creeping weakness in his body was crushed beneath sheer willpower. Sword technique. Shattering rock. He spun, waist twisting, force traveling up his spine as every drop of strength poured into his sword. The Kusanagi flared dark red, tracing a deadly arc. Boom! Like a knife slicing through tofu, the massive rock fist exploded beneath his strike. The sword's aftershock lashed out, cutting into a jonin's chest. His vest tore apart, revealing a deep wound that sprayed blood as he was thrown backward like a broken doll. The earth cracked open, the shock tearing a pit into the ground. Ryo staggered but kept moving, his target in sight. At that instant, 7 or 8 bluish kunai coated in poison shot toward his back and legs from blind angles. Life and death hung by a thread. Ryo bent his body unnaturally, evading with supreme control and his danger sense. Most of the kunai grazed past. Pooh! One pierced his thigh. Another embedded into his torn shoulder. Ah! Agony flared. The venom burned through his veins, darkness creeping into his vision. He dropped to one knee as blood poured freely. He's done for. Kill him. A nearby jonin howled. Poison, blood loss, exhaustion, his body was on the verge of collapse. Yet he did not fall. His sharp gaze swept across the battlefield and locked onto an Iwa shinobi sneaking toward the altar's control panel behind Orochimaru. He lunged. Ignoring the tearing pain in his shoulder, Ryo shoved his left hand into the wound, grasped the embedded kunai, and ripped it out, flesh and all. The wound widened, blood gushing again. Without hesitation, he flung the blood-soaked kunai with all his remaining strength. Pooh shik. The kunai struck the Iwa shinobi's throat with surgical precision, throwing the corpse backward. At the cave's mouth, Tsunade's heart nearly shattered. Even after witnessing Ryo's monstrous endurance countless times, this sight still shocked her to her core. Inside the cave, Jiraiya's swollen eyes caught sight of Ryo pulling the kunai and killing the enemy. His cracked lips moved weakly. Monster. Hey, he rasped, so it's not just a figure of speech. He really is, a monster. We can't stop the sealing core. The last shred of obsession in Ryo's mind burned. His blood boiled. With a roar, he surged forward. Each step splashed crimson in the mud. The Iwa shinobi formed a living wall with their bodies, blocking his path. Earth release. Earth prison hall. A Jonin roared, slamming his palms into the ground. Boom. The earth trembled. Two heavy stone gates slammed shut, forming a hemispherical prison lined with spikes. He's trapped. Poor Chakra. Focus fire. Voices shouted in triumph. The adjutant drew his blade frantically. Kill him now. The next instant. Rumble. A roar, more terrifying than hell itself, erupted from within. A torrent of red sword energy ripped through the chakra-reinforced prison, obliterating it and the Jonin who cast it. Stone dust and blood exploded outward. Ryo's blood-soaked figure emerged from the carnage. He was gasping, blood and sweat streaming down his mud-covered body. His sword hand trembled. His vision blurred. Every flying slash drained the last of his life force. The final distance. Ahead stood 5 elite Jonin forming an iron barrier. They abandoned attack, focusing solely on defense. Combine your jutsu. Their leader roared. 5 sets of seals formed in unison. Chakra surged violently. Boom. A towering composite earth wall rose, layers stacking like steel. Beyond it glowed the altar etched with sealing runes. Several sealing ninjas pressed their palms against the core, injecting chakra frantically. A cold, heavy spatial force spread, locking down Ryo's flying thunder god coordinates. Protect the sealing core. Iwas shall not fall. The adjutant roared, eyes bloodshot. Ryo glanced once toward the cave. Tsunade's chakra was nearly spent protecting Jiraiya. Orochimaru stood watching, his expression unreadable. No time left. Not even a heartbeat. One final breath. One final flicker of life. Ryo lifted his head as if to swallow the bloodied air. His life force ignited like a dying star. Steam rose from his skin as his chakra burned. Strength ignited. Life ignited. Soul ignited. Both hands gripped the kusanagi. He raised it high. Ignoring the shinobi lunging from the walls. Ignoring blades aimed at his vital points. Ignoring everything. There was only the altar ahead. Slice. Time froze. Dark red brilliance condensed to a single point. It exploded outward, a beam so thin it looked like a thread, yet brighter than the sun. It broke the sound barrier, tearing through space itself. Where the light passed. Pooh. 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 The 5 elite Jonin and the chakra-reinforced wall were sliced cleanly in half, silently and effortlessly. The cut was mirror smooth, reflecting their frozen, terrified faces. The sword energy didn't stop. It pierced through the sealing core altar, tearing apart the runes and the sealing shinobi maintaining it. A ripping sound cracked through the air. The oppressive, suffocating force vanished instantly. Space felt free again. Ryo dropped to one knee, his face pale, lips cracked, spitting blood. He was at his limit. The toxin spread uncontrollably through his body. The seal, it's broken. Yamada and the others. Panicked screams echoed. He's not going to last. Kill him. The adjutant shouted, voice shrill. Iwa shinobi surged toward Ryo's kneeling form. Ryo. Tsunade screamed, about to run forward, but Orochimaru grabbed her arm. Ryo's vision blurred. Is it over? Just as a kunai was about to pierce his back. A familiar coordinate of the Flying Thunder God technique flared to life in his senses. It was the kunai he had secretly placed deep inside the cave earlier. Ryo's head snapped up. The corner of his bloodied lips curled into a cold, arrogant smile. You want to kill me? Dream on. Flying Thunder God. He roared, his hoarse voice echoing across the battlefield. Ryo vanished. The next moment, he appeared beside the unconscious Jiraiya. His arms shot out, grabbing Jiraiya's collar and reaching for Tsunade. You. Orochimaru's pupils shrank, startled. And you, Ryo said coldly, his other hand lunging toward him. Before anyone could react. Inside the cave, 4 figures, Ryo, the dying Jiraiya, the stunned Tsunade, and the shocked Orochimaru, vanished completely. All that remained on the wall was a kunai engraved with the Flying Thunder God seal, trembling faintly. Silence. Outside, hundreds of Iwa shinobi struck at empty air. The adjutant's face twisted between horror and disbelief. The entire Iwa force stared at the blood-soaked ground and the vanished cave. The ceiling was destroyed. The man was gone. That red-haired monster had escaped using spacetime ninjutsu, right under their noses, taking everything they fought to protect. Rumble. The endless rain poured down, washing over corpses, shattered earth, and the despair etched into every Iowa shinobi's face. They had lost half their elite force in exchange for a ruined battlefield and an unbearable humiliation. What now? Which way to pursue? Could they even catch him? The rain drowned out their rage. To be continued. I can only say maybe, since it was his first real battle in the war. His lack of experience and perhaps a touch of overconfidence likely led to those rookie mistakes. 8 comments 0 vote. Chapter 90. Tsunade's generous hug. Boom. The roar of torn space still buzzed in his skull. The knife-cold wind and thick stench of blood were instantly replaced by the heat and urgency of the Konoha camp, and the sting of disinfectant. Ryo was drenched in blood. The mud beneath his feet swirled dark red. Drowned by pain and venom alike, his consciousness finally went dark. The image of collapsing earth walls and the terror of Iowa shinobi flashed once before his body went limp, pitching forward. Ryo. Tsunade's scream cracked out on pure instinct. She threw her arms wide and, a split second before he hit the mud, caught him hard against her chest. The young body in her arms was ice-cold, his breath so faint it made her heart seize. To hell with composure. The bloodied, mud-smeared face of Ryo sank deep into Tsunade's generous chest, the only warmth in a frozen world of death. Tsunade put her entire strength into holding the man in her arms, clutching him like a treasure about to shatter. His frozen brow pressed into the hollow of her neck. She couldn't tell if what soaked her skin was rain, blood, or her own tears. At the same time, her other hand shot out, hooking with surgical precision into the collar of the man collapsed beside them, Jiraiya. His chest was crushed in, his face pale, already unconscious. Her knuckles turned white. Orochimaru. Tsunade's roar came out raw, her voice twisted by terror and strain. Her golden eyes burned with reckless determination. Help me, now. From the shadows, Orochimaru glided forward without a sound, like a stream of quicksilver. His serpentine gaze flicked toward the ancient sword at Ryo's waist, soaked in blood yet still radiating ferocity. His eyes narrowed before returning to their usual icy calm. When he saw Tsunade clutch Ryo to her chest as if she wanted to merge him into her bones, the corner of his pale mouth twitched upward, a faint, almost mocking curve. Something flickered in his golden pupils. Something about this master-disciple dynamic seemed a little unusual. That idiot Jiraiya probably thought the same. The thought passed through his mind, unspoken. Orochimaru wasted no words. His pale hand moved with precision, pressing down on Jiraiya's shoulder. His movements were calm, efficient, and deliberate. Ha! 2 figures burst into motion at once. Tsunade held the unconscious Ryo. Orochimaru dragged the dying Jiraiya. They became streaks of crimson, tore through the heavy tent flaps, and, wreathed in the breath of death, charged into the chaos of the main medical camp. Out of the way. Highest priority. Tsunade's thunderous shout swept through the tent like a physical wave, crushing every sound beneath it. Even the air felt as if it had frozen. Clear space. Disinfect. Cardiac stimulants. Chakra restoratives. Move. She didn't need to explain the steps. The moment her sharp eyes that saw through life and death, landed on Jiraiya's wounds, the battlefield turned into an operating room. She set Ryo down roughly on the stretcher next to her and immediately turned to Jiraiya. Rip. Her blood-splattered hands became weapons against death itself. 10 times stronger than before, emerald medical chakra burst from her palms. With unrestrained fury, she pressed it to the fatal wound in Jiraiya's chest. Flesh sizzled. The power of life flared to life. Her sharp eyes flicked toward Ryo. She barked at a trembling genin, check his vitals. Antitoxin, now. Keep him stable. Any change, report immediately. The ferocity in her tone barely concealed the fear beneath it. The tent became a battlefield in an instant. Under Tsunade's absolute command, every medic worked with desperate precision. Outside, in the muddy clearing, the last tremor of warped space had not yet faded. Danzo stood unmoving in the rain, a stone pillar wrapped in a dark cloak. His hawk-like eyes fixed on the emerald glow spilling from the tent, the light of Tsunade's full power. Moments later, he moved. 1 step forward, and the mud sank beneath his weight. He pushed through the flaps, a shadow entering a place thick with blood and rebirth. Without glancing at the medics rushing about, he walked straight toward a silver-gray figure leaning against a post, arms folded and eyes cold, Orochimaru. Status. Orochimaru turned slowly, golden eyes meeting Danzo's gaze. The air between them seemed to freeze. Tsunade and the so-called dead last, his chin tilted toward the operating table, are dying. Kamiyama Ryo, his gaze shifted to the stretcher, where the boy's breathing was shallow and faint. Grievously wounded, comatose. A pause. His voice cut sharp and clean. Left shoulder, through and through. Thigh torn open. Overdose of field meds. A numbing neurotoxin from Iwa is spreading. Without immediate treatment, the damage will set deep. Danzo's gaze fell on Ryo like a vulture sizing up dying prey. Once he confirmed the state of both bodies, something flickered behind his eye, part analysis, part calculation, and something colder still. How did they get back? He asked at last, his tone dark and heavy. The corner of Orochimaru's mouth curved faintly, a near mockery. Spacetime ninjutsu, he said. His golden eyes cut toward the unconscious boy, as if weighing him on a scale. He broke through Iwa's spatial interference. His pupils narrowed. No doubt. The flying thunder god technique. Space. Danzo's breath caught. His single eye trembled with shock, disbelief, and fury before he forced it all down. The flying thunder god. Enshrank forbidden art from the scroll of seals. A legend, untouched for decades. Hiruzen actually allowed that monster to learn it. And the boy had succeeded, in the middle of death itself, at his age. A colder rage than the Iwa ambush seized Danzo's chest like iron claws. At Konoha's command post, reinforcement units were mustering. The slaughter on Ridge B7 had everyone on edge. Headquarters was already boiling over. Yet. Stand down. Danzo's voice cut through the chaos. Recall the reinforcements. Hold position. The order fell heavy and final. Several staffers froze, stunned. Danzo's gaze stayed fixed on Orochimaru. Transmit immediately. Cancel reinforcements. Hold position, he repeated, his tone sharp and fraying. They're already back. But, Danzo-sama. Jiraiya-sama and Tsunade-sama, a staffer began, panicked. I said recall. Execute now. Danzo's voice was like an ice pick driven through the man's spine. The ninja shuddered and ran to obey. Silence fell again, broken only by the hum of chakra and Tsunade's ragged breathing. Danzo's chest rose and fell as he fought to suppress his anger. His dark gaze shifted back to Orochimaru. A complete report. To me. To Hiruzen. His tone made it clear it was an order, not a request. As you wish. Orochimaru straightened, a cold glint flickering in his eyes before fading. He knew this report would shake Konoha's very foundations. His gaze lingered on the unconscious Ryo and then returned to Danzo, his unease deepening. Without another word, he slipped out through the tent flaps and into the pounding rain. Danzo stood alone, the scent of blood and antiseptic thick around him. His eyes returned to the stretcher, to the boy lying there pale and unmoving. Severe wounds, coma, dying. Such a fragile state. One small accident, one slight delay in treatment would be enough. A cold light flickered in his eyes. He drew a slow breath, heavy and deliberate, then turned away. Keep this place under watch, he said to a root ninja hidden in the shadows. Any anomaly, report immediately. With that, he vanished into the deeper dark of the command tent. Chapter 91. Ryo is rewarded. Land of Earth, Iwagakure, Tsuchikage's office. The air was as solid as a boulder. Trash. All of you are trash. Onoki's roar, rage and heartache compressed to the limit, boomed like buried thunder, making the windowpanes buzz. His small body floated in midair. The old face, furrowed like craggy rock, flushed a dark purple from pain and humiliation. The chin strap of the Tsuchikage hat dug into his jaw, leaving him short of breath, half from fury, half from poverty. In his fist, he crushed a rain-soaked urgent scroll just delivered from AIM, his knuckles blanching gray-white from the pressure. It was not that he did not want to smash something to vent. He looked at the bare floor, with only a few old planks still half clean, then at the few intact clay teacups on the shelf. The land of Earth was broke enough to ring hollow. Onoki had served as Tsuchikage for decades. Pinching every coin was the only way to keep the village's veneer of dignity. How could he bear to break anything valuable? Break it and you have to buy a new one. With what? The money saved could buy how many explosive tags? 1,300 elites. Onoki's voice shook with pure heartache. 2 battalions. 3 top-tier sealing teams. Sent to crush 3 half-dead Konoha remnants trapped in AIM. The more he spoke, the angrier he got, spittle flying. And the result? Beaten by a single red-haired brat barely into his teens, alone. He slashed the scroll through the air like a spear. He tore open my line. He butchered that idiot Akagan. He even wrecked the core sealing barrier. And in the end, he took them and ran. He did not throw a cup, but his free hand clawed at empty air, as if he could seize the invisible loss and shove it back where it came from. He ran. He howled again, voice going hoarse, like a poor householder staring down a bill from hell. You pack of useless pastries. Do you have any idea how many years it took to train 1300 elites? How much grain they ate? He choked, despairing. Now they are dead, in my land of Earth's treasury mice are starving. The Jonin couriers wanted to sink through the floorboards. Running a poor village was hard. They shared their Tsuchikage's pain, and feared being burned to ash by his wrath. Onoki panted, his small frame trembling. He glared at the characters on the scroll. Each word stabbed his emaciated wallet. The cold descriptions exploded in his mind. Battle-hardened elite Jonin decapitated before they could even scream. Every thread led back to the bolded name, Ryo, Kamiyama Ryo, the red-haired monster who appeared from nowhere and single-handedly shredded his encirclement plan. Monster. Onoki squeezed the word through his teeth, the weight of loss and the prospect of medical and pension expenses grinding his heart to paste. Konoha, really or blessed, 13-year-old monster, one man against 1,000, and he could still ferry people out with the flying thunder god. He let out a few dry wheezes, like a broken bellows, a grim, self-mocking sound. Flying thunder god, damned expensive, spacetime ninjutsu you can only run on money. He sagged back into the old wooden chair that symbolized the will of stone. Anger ebbed, replaced by the tidal weight of economic loss and debts to come. Konoha was a factory for prodigies. And Iwa. The next generation, any reliable sprouts. The Jinchuriki. Still in cultivation, with terrifyingly low success rates. No money meant everything was hard. A cold, heavy anxiety cinched his chest. Listen up. Onoki's tone recovered a Tsuchikage's chill, more frugal steel than fury. Notify all frontline units. From now on, he paused, as if the order to come scalded his tongue. Upon encountering that red-haired devil, Kamiyama Ryo, within mission parameters, he ground his molars, each word clinking like coins on stone. Authorize strategic retreat. Avoid meaningless casualties. Preserve combat power. Do not record mission failure. Finished, he slumped like a bellows gone flat. Strat, EGIC retreat. One Jonin blurted before he could stop himself. How was that different from allowing them to run? When had proud Iwagakure stooped so low? Yes, run. Onoki slapped the desk. Dust sifted down. But this is not over. His eye flared with venom. If I cannot outspend him on shinobi, I will outspend him on bounties. Let every gutter rat in the underworld grind him down. He raised one desiccated finger. His voice hammered the number that would set the shadow world boiling. Issue a top-level wanted order to all exchange houses. Target, Konoha Genin, Kamiyama Ryo, alias Red-Haired Devil. Bounty. The office seemed to be sucked dry of air. 100 million Ryo, dead or alive. Onoki shouted the figure, his heart bleeding. 100 million. Make sure every hungry wolf in the shinobi world knows his name, and his price. A poor man gone ruthless, weaponizing the underworld's greed to drown the red-haired beast that had cost Iway fortune. Save every coin you can, claw back every coin you can. Oh, 100 million. The Jonin finally lost composure. Their minds blanked. That sum would drive the entire underworld mad. Onoki waved a pained hand, shooing them like flies. Yes, 100 million. Move. Do not waste time. The faster it spreads, the better. Inwardly, he was already calculating. Move fast, maybe he could shave the intermediaries, fees. Land of Fire Border, Konoha Forward Camp, Command Pavilion. Smoke hung thick. The air was heavy as water. Hiruzen held a report whose ink was barely dry. He had forgotten to draw on his pipe. The ember pulsed and dimmed. Beneath his usually gentle, farmer-like face ran lines of bleakness and unwilling awe. The report came from Orochimaru, concise to the bone, each word like a bloodstained blade. Ryo broke 1,000 with one rider. Frontally crushed an Iwa elite regiment, approximately 1,000, including 13 elite Jonin. Killed the commander Akiwa. Shattered composite defensive ninjutsu and the core barrier, suspected shrank area slash. While mortally wounded, left shoulder through and through, thigh laceration to near bone, massive blood loss, compounded with Iwa neurotoxin, forcibly triggered an incompletely mastered flying thunder god technique and precisely extracted 3 critically wounded comrades, Tsunade, Orochimaru, Jiraiya. Every word strained the ceiling of Hiruzen's definition of genius. 13, he finally took a deep pull. The bite in his lungs could not quell the cold creeping over his heart. This was not genius. This was demonic. A monster howling amid battlefield ruins. This report alone could rip the thin veneer of balance among the five great nations and pin Konoha at the center. He closed his eyes. A memory from months ago rose, clear as glass, the red-haired boy calmly transcribing the Flying Thunder God scroll before him. His mood then. Satisfied with the exchange price. Pleased that Tsunade had taken a promising pupil. A lofty, cautionary regret at a boy overreaching for a forbidden art, warning him the Flying Thunder God was deadly to practice, that he should consider. Now, that warning, in the face of this blood-ink dispatch, seemed ridiculous, pathetically feeble. The kid hid too deep. Deep enough to chill the bone. This boy. Such power, at 13. If he grows. If he goes out of control. If he harbors resentment, would he become the next Uchiha Madara? The next catastrophe threatening Konoha and the shinobi world's balance. His eyes snapped open, hawk-sharp. He crushed the dark thought under iron will. No. He must not think that way. He is Tsunade's disciple. And who is Tsunade? His own direct disciple, Konoha's princess. Which means, he is my disciple's disciple. Ties of lineage. Chains of tutelage. He risked his life to save Konoha's three main pillars, Jiraiya, Orochimaru, and Tsunade. This power, in the end, is Konoha's power. He must stabilize it, soothe it, bind it close. His gaze slid to the last line, mortally wounded, still comatose. A subtle, tangled note flickered in his heart. Was it pain, or a guilty breath of relief? He could not tell. Perhaps both. These wounds, this coma, briefly tamped down the primal fear his political instincts felt toward such monstrous power, and bought him time. No more hesitation. Hiruzen's eyes hardened. The Hokage's decisive chill snapped into place. With power like this, how could he remain a mere genin? A glorious victory would be tainted by the insult of a hero with too low a rank. He slapped the desk. Ash leapt. His words cut fast as drawn steel. My order. Urgent dispatch. Immediately to the aim front. An Anbu appeared, dropping to one knee. Konoha Genin, Kamiyama Ryo. Hiruzen's voice was iron, beyond dispute. While executing a top-secret mission on the aim front, he encountered a large-scale, premeditated Iwa ambush. Our core strength was encircled. At that critical instant, Ryo took charge, slew the enemy commander, shattered their line, and broke 1,000 with one blade. With peerless valor and resolve, he rescued Jiraiya, Orochimaru, and Tsunade, the village's top assets. His merit is unparalleled and shines upon Konoha, worthy of a star that expands our borders. He drew a breath, already seeing shocked elders, but his tone did not waver. On the basis of his unmatched strength and the indelible, tide-turning service rendered to the village, all procedures are waived. All precedent is set aside. The Chunin exams are dispensed with. Effective immediately, Ryo is promoted to Konoha Chunin. The order takes effect at once. Published to all of Konoha and announced to our allies. Chunin was only the first step, the bare minimum to preserve the faces of Konoha and the Hokage. A 13-year-old monster genin was a joke. Next, and quickly, he would need undeniable battlefield justifications to push this boy to Jonin, rightfully and publicly. That was the key. The inked command became a black streak in the sky, borne by a hawk toward the smoke-wreathed front. Silence returned. Only the tiny crackle of burning tobacco remained. Hiruzen lifted the report again, still warm with blood. His muddied eyes fell once more on the name that punched through paper, Ryo. Power is a double-edged sword. When its shine grows too blinding, can the hand that grips it still be at peace? Hiruzen's fingers tightened, just a hair, on the pipe. Konoha Forward Camp, Battlefield Medical Zone, Private Ward. The thick scent of medicine braided with blood. The white tent walled off the outside clamor, leaving only the hush after survival. On the simple cot lay a figure wrapped in layer upon layer of bandages. A thin spear of sunlight slipped through the canvas seams to fall on his striking red hair, lending him a hint of life. His face was as pale as fresh snow. His lips were cracked. Only the faintest rise and fall proved life still clung to him. Kamiyama Ryo. The red-haired devil. Konoha's newly minted Chunin. He had been unconscious for 3 full days. At his bedside, a figure in a purple shinobi uniform, stained with a little blood and dust, kept silent watch. Uchiha Makoto. Right now, all her focus was on that young face, too quickly covered in scars. 3 days. Makoto's black eyes were veined with red. Her cheeks had grown a touch hollow, marked by worry and sleepless fatigue. In her slender, steady hands, a warm cloth, nearly cooled to dryness, moved with care, avoiding the terrifying punctures and jagged rents, gently wiping the clammy sweat from Ryo's brow. Every accidental brush of her fingertip brought a tiny tremor. She dampened the cloth again and moistened his cracked lips. Her motions were feather soft, as if she feared to disturb his sleep, or to worsen wounds that even Tsunadesima had needed her full strength to stabilize. Across the camp, the legend of the red-haired devil already boiled over, and his Chunin promotion stirred waves among the high ranks. But for Makoto, keeping vigil here, those identities and honors meant nothing. The cloth paused at his neck. There, a shallow line, grazed by a rock blade, faintly showed beneath the bandage. Makoto's fingertips flinched, then did not touch it. She only smoothed the last bit of moisture with the hem of her sleeve. Her gaze rested on his sleeping face, worry, guilt, an unspoken ache, and the tiniest, secret thread of joy. For this moment, Ryo belonged to her, however briefly, and not to her best friend Kushina alone. The wire in her heart eased a fraction in the quiet, medicinal air. In the ward, only 2 breaths whispered. Motes of dust drifted through the bar of light. Suddenly, Ryo's lashes quivered. His pale lips stirred. Makoto held her breath and leaned in. To be continued. 3 comments 0 vote. Chapter 92. Best friend takes the lead. Ryo's lashes jolted, and his cracked eyelids dragged open. Harsh light sliced his muddied vision into wavering motes. Every breath tugged at pain like torn flesh. His bones felt filled with cold, sour lead. The thick smell of medicine and blood clung in the back of his nose, a stubborn reminder of the battle that had nearly ground him to dust. His sight struggled to focus. The first thing he saw was a calm swath of deep violet cloth, faintly damp. Above it, a slightly pale profile, exhaustion barely hidden beneath carefully kept softness. Her black hair was a little damp with sweat, clinging to her clean cheek. Uchiha Makoto. Back to him, she was half kneeling by a small brazier, carefully wiping the rim of a clay medicine jar with a damp cloth, gentle, almost devout. Warm, yellow firelight cast a small, tremulous shadow beneath her lowered lashes, softening the hard edge of the tang of drugs in the air. Sensing the gaze behind her, Makoto's hand paused. She turned slowly. In the obsidian of her eyes, worry had not yet faded. Surprise flashed, and was swiftly pressed down beneath the composure of a clan's daughter. Ryokan, you are awake. Her voice was deliberately softened, pleasantly husky, as if she had kept vigil a long time. How do you feel? Do the wounds still hurt badly? Ryo tried to speak. Fire raked his throat. Only a hoarse breath escaped. He twitched his neck. Pain shot through the numb, heavy hole in his left shoulder. His brows knit on instinct. Do not move. Makoto set the jar down at once and stepped to the bedside. As she leaned in, a clean wintergreen scent mixed with salve came close. A cool fingertip gently pressed down his wrist when he tried to lift it. Tsunadesima said your injuries are severe, you must rest. Especially your left shoulder. She did not finish. Her long lashes trembled, just the right hint of aftershock. Water, Ryo rasped at last. Okay. Makoto rose smoothly, with no wasted motion. She picked up a rough clay cup from the low stand, tested the temperature, then topped it from a sealed waterskin, stirred, and brought it to his lips. Her other hand slid under his nape with gentle, unarguable strength, lifting him a little. Slowly. Do not choke. Warm water slid down his throat like rain into cracked earth. After a few swallows, the near-death exhaustion inside him eased a fraction. How long was I out? Still hoarse, but at least coherent. Over 3 days. Makoto set the cup down and carefully brushed away a tiny bead of water at the corner of his mouth, quick as a blink, her fingertips touch so brief it felt imagined. Everyone is worried. Especially Kushina. There were several messages from her side. I did not tell her exactly how serious it was. I was afraid she would rush here. What is the situation outside? Ryo's gaze drifted past her shoulder, as if to pierce the white canvas to the battlefield he had just carved his way through. Makoto paused, then took a warmed cloth from the brazier's edge. She wiped his brow and the line of his neck, lifting the clammy sweat with a practiced, feather-light touch. The front is the same, entangled fights, attrition. Not much change. We are still holding the main points. Her voice was even, like stating a mundane fact, sanding down the brutality of war. The reinforcement to Ridge B7 was cancelled. Iowa took heavy losses that day, I think. Their attacks have eased a bit these past 2 days. Jiraiya. Ryo remembered the extra cargo he had dragged back, the man with the Kavetan chest. Makoto's hands did not stop, working around the unbandaged skin of his arm, avoiding the intersecting abrasions and the borders of the dressings. Jiraiya-sama pulled through. Tsunadesima and Orochimaru-sama watched him all night. Several broken bones, organs badly hurt, but he will live. He is recovering now. She paused, a true note of relief woven into her tone. Ryokan, thanks to you. Ryo listened in silence, eyes unreadable. Jiraiya surviving, good. His only target had been Tsunade. Saving Jiraiya and Orochimaru had been a natural side effect. With the objective secured, and no large-scale battle imminent, the wire inside him loosened the faintest bit. In addition, Makoto set down the cloth, lifted a bowl of thick, dark brown medicine she had been warming, and stirred it gently to let the steam thin, speaking as if offhand. Hokage-sama signed an emergency promotion. Ryo looked up. A question flickered in the black of his eyes. Congratulations, Ryokan, Makoto said with a poised, gentle smile, eyes subtly watchful. You are a Konoha Chunin now. She dipped a spoon, blew on it softly, and raised it to his lips. Decided while you were unconscious. Ryo's noncommittal sound carried no ripple. Titles did not move him. Power was the only measure. That gray forehead protector, he had long since outgrown it. His gaze fell back to the dense liquid in the bowl. No need to feed me. He tried to lift his right hand for the bowl. The simple motion triggered a wave of intolerable sore-numb pain in his left shoulder, like steel needles driven into bone seams. The muscles of his right arm slumped with an uncontrollable heaviness. His wrist managed a few inches off the cot, trembled hard, and dropped. Fine cold sweat sprang on his brow. His body had never felt so strange, so heavy. Those battlefield outbursts that wrung out every reserve, the life-burning flying slashes and flying thunder god, the wounds forced shut, now the backlash came like a landslide and a tidal wave. Makoto missed none of it, every flicker of expression, each bodily response. In her heart, a hidden hope grew another ring. Watching the man she admired, a thread of fierce possessiveness rose, silent and wild. She crushed the untimely thrill. The worse the injuries, the longer this beast would be chained to the bed. The longer he stayed, the more likely her invisible threads could set a mark deep in the soul beneath that iron shell, Uchiha Makoto's mark. As for her best friend Kushina, safe in Konoha, far away. Guilt had already thinned beneath day after day closeness and the quiet swell of possessive desire. See. Her voice gentled further, an almost indulgent scold, soothing a stubborn child. I said do not move. If your wound splits, I cannot answer to Tsunade-sama. She held the bowl steady, gaze kind but firm. Let me. Kushina asked me to take care of you. She is most worried about your health. Kushina, raised so naturally, like a well-timed flag, wrapped all her nearness in perfect justification. It made every act, every touch, feel like it carried the warmth of their faraway red-haired friend. A spoon of hot, bitter medicine crossed his lips. Strong earthiness and domineering bitterness detonated on his tongue. His throat bobbed hard. He swallowed. Watching his tight brows and rigid endurance, something like a microsmal flickered at the bottom of Makoto's eyes, like a hunter savoring a trapped beast's struggle. She stirred patiently, voice soft and distracting. Nawakaisenpai came by twice. Clumsy as ever, knocked over the basin and nearly soaked you again. I sent him to quartermaster duty to sort supplies. At a time like this, someone careful is better company, do you not think so, Ryokan? Her tone was easy, with a girlish, teasing judgment, quietly casting herself as the most suitable caretaker. Ryo did not answer, he just shut his eyes against the indescribable bitterness. Makoto's lip curve deepened by a hair. She set the bowl down, crossed to a small deep violet wicker chest she had brought, and opened it. Bending at the waist, back to him, knees together, the curve from slim knee to small ankle traced a gentle line beneath her skirt. When she turned back, there was a tiny plate in her hand, oiled paper wrapped around a few dark preserved fruits, a rare luxury with supply lines tight. Open up. No spoon. Two slender, pale fingers lifted a piece and brought it directly to his lips, subtly intimate, quietly irresistible. Her fingertips brushed the cracked edge of his lower lip, hardly there at all. A strange sensation sparked. Ryo's body tightened, barely. This closeness, this way, was past the usual line. Only the occasional crackle from the brazier, and the sudden awkwardness of two breathing rhythms, filled the tent. He hesitated, gazed dark on the fingers and the sweet. The bitter aftertaste in his mouth clung like a parasite. In the end, survival, and flight from the taste hell, won. He parted his lips and took the morsel. As her fingers withdrew, they grazed his lip again, lightly. Sweet. Makoto asked, the exact right note of gentle expectation. Her eyes flicked to his moving lips, deepened a shade, then shifted away, natural as breath, as if that moment never happened. Ryo hummed vaguely and swallowed. Time ran thick in the little square of canvas and wood. Ryo's face stayed expressionless, words few. Mostly, he closed his eyes and tried to coax his Nirdri chakra to crawl, mending shredded muscle and nerve, fighting the lingering numbness of poison. Makoto's presence grew. Like a silent shadow, she always occupied the exact spot within his sightline. When he felt dry, water of just the right warmth met his lips. Before sweat could mat his hair, a warm cloth wiped it away. When pain broke his focus midhill, a folded strip of clean cloth appeared for him to bite. Each approach, each brief brush of skin or cloth, each exchange that let fingers touch for a heartbeat, became a drill Makoto practiced and refined. She fused a noble girl's reserve with an almost selfless, I was entrusted, stance, making everything she did seem proper, unassailable. Chapter 93. Big Mistake. The tent reeked of herbs and blood, a mix sharp enough to make one's skull ache. Ryo reclined against the pillow, eyes shut, his breathing deep and steady. The last dregs of chakra inside him surged again like a maddened bull, humming through his bones. The gore-rimmed hole in his left shoulder, almost his undoing, had begun to sprout new flesh under Tsunade's unforgiving mystical palm technique and his own monstrous recovery. The skin looked pink and tender. The bone had set. The numb ache rose, like countless ants gnawing at his bones. But that itch was good, life. Strength, strand by strand, seeped back into the body that had nearly come apart. He tested the fingertips of his left hand. Good. The shackle of injury was loosening. Outside, the battlefield's iron tang mingled with shouts of slaughter and burrowed into the tent, teasing his dormant killing intent until it stirred, itching to break free from the coffin of death. Shra. The flap snapped up. A gust of cold wind rode the camp's metallic reek inside. Tsunade strode in, hem of her field medic robe spattered with mud. Her domineering presence rushed in and blasted the sticky stench of medicine out of the tent. Kid, tough life you have, huh? Her voice was loud, that impatient kind of concern. She flatly ignored Makoto, who hastily stepped aside, and flashed to the bedside. Quick as lightning, she yanked open the ragged bandage on Ryo's left shoulder. Emerald medical chakra flared in her palm like a tiny sun and, with no ceremony, pressed into that torn wound, hot enough to make the air tremble. HMPH. Ryo did not bother lifting his lids, answering through his nose. When his eyes did open, a cold light had already pooled within, sharp as a freshly honed boning knife. Fresh from the battlefield, his feral edge never slept, not even with a single breath left. Tsunade's rough fingertips skimmed with surgical precision along the edge of that fresh, pink, hideous scar. The feel beneath her fingers made her heart jolt, skin stretched over coiled, dangerous power. Her brows knit tight. What made her heart leap was not only his freakish self-healing. It was also that, beneath flesh and blood, something stirred that made her instinctively, deeply uneasy, and strangely moved. Just now, in those 0-point-something seconds when her fingers brushed the searing edge of his wound, the feeling struck again. Like a jolt arcing through her heart, making some corner she had buried on purpose seize tight. Damn, that again, Tsunade's mind flashed uncontrollably to days earlier, hauling a scarlattist Ryo into her arms, his weight pressed against. Back then she had focused only on his injuries and had not thought further. But when last night's cold crept into the lull between fire and blood, her tired body had suddenly remembered the pressure against her chest, the heat, the feel of his rapid breath against her skin. She snapped her head to the side, golden hair slashing a violent arc, as if to whip the intrusive fluster and panic out of her skull, then forced all attention back onto treatment. Bones set, chewed up like a dog had it. Her voice was rough and husky. Smack. She slapped a slab of sticky, stinging dark green salve onto the wound, hard, almost too hard. Tendons and meridians, though, solid. 100 times sturdier than that useless Jiraiya. Lie still for a few days. If you dare hack your bones to pieces with that move again, I will drag you out and bury you. She cursed as she worked, but her bandaging hands moved so fast they stirred wind. In no time it was tidy. Done, she turned to leave and stopped at the flap. Her eyes cut like knives, first over Makoto, standing there like a wooden post, then back to Ryo, eyes closed and regulating his breath, but already fierce again. That look was too complicated to read, assessing, irritable, and laced with something she could not even name herself. HMPH. Makoto, not bad. She tossed the words out abruptly, like dropping a tool as she walked by. Before the words had settled, the heavy flap went whack as she yanked it open and strode out into the cold wind, steps that recognized no kin, almost like she was fleeing something. The half-meaning remark, and that iron-scented wind, tore open Pandora's box. Makoto lowered her head. In the shadows, her eyes flared with a sudden, startling light. Tsunade's tacit approval, that was what it was to her, worked better than 10,000 words. The last bar on the beast's cage, at its weakest, had just swung open. Silence settled again. Only Ryo's steady, powerful breathing remained. Makoto's heart pounded louder than a charge horn. She lifted a rough clay cup steaming warm. The air pulled taut, the silence she had engineered stuffing it to bursting. Cup in hand, steps still light, as if she walked out of a painting, she glided to the bed, a face of impeccably tuned concern. Ryokan, have a little water, moisten your throat. Soft, gentle, the tail of her words floated, extra clear in the cramped hush. Her left toe just happened to snag an unseen fold in the ground cloth. Her body lost balance in an instant. Makoto let out a short, convincing cry. Ah! The world spun. She pitched hard toward Ryo's side, out of control. The cup in her hand, half full of near-boiling water, flipped at a perfect angle, flying with her momentum straight toward the deadliest zone below Ryo's waist. A hair's breadth. Ryo's eyes flashed open. At the same time, his left hand, the arm that had only just regained a faint sense of movement, lashed outward on instinct. Not a cup shattering, but a heavy thump of impact. Makoto's upper body, along with her panic-tilted face, slammed squarely, solidly into Ryo's chest, which had thrust up to meet her. The scalding water he had anticipated did not hit him. His lightning elbow parry barely knocked it aside. Most of it splashed onto the cold dirt and tattered sheet with a hiss. But the more dangerous contact arrived. Time stalled. A bundle of soft warmth, honeysuckle cool and sweet with a girl's scent, pressed flush to Ryo's iron chest. Worse, zero distance between their faces. Cold, an unfamiliar, faintly medicinal bitterness and a hint of candied sweetness, soft and cool, crashed onto his cracked lips, hard enough to bump his teeth. Breath tangled. Everything jammed. Ryo's pupils pinholed. His nose filled with the girl's scent. The soft, cold press on his lips was as numbing as the most potent toxin, freezing every action and thought. For the first time, utterly stumped. A battlefield demon who butchered gods without blinking now tasted something called being at a loss. Every muscle locked to stone. His left arm still hung there in that dumb blocking pose. Makoto froze as well. She could feel the heat of his chest through thin cloth, and the heartbeat that seized for an instant. Her lips were tight against the heat-dry shape of his. In the plan it was a light touch. It became a crash. The effect overshot the mark. Her mind went white with a buzz. Shame, panic, and the shiver of a plan succeeding melted into a stew. Her heart nearly leapt out of her throat. But the Uchiha clan's time-tempered bridal drills kicked in. In less than a second of blankness, the actress's instinct rolled over every raw feeling. Performance, full on. The black eyes inches away, parted in shock, instantly pooled with shine, fluttering long lashes like a scared fawn. Shyness, grievance, and natural fluster, woven without a seam. Like she had suffered a terrible fright and slight, she jerked her face up and sprang from his arms. She staggered back 2 steps. Her cheeks flamed, red from the pale ear tips down the fine curve of her neck. She scrubbed her mouth with the back of her hand on reflex, then snatched it back as if shocked. Those lovely eyes darted in panic, landing on Ryo's lips, still a little damp, then skittering away as if burned, head bowed deep. Her shoulders trembled just a hair. A tiny mosquito-weak voice, edged with tears, quavered out. I am sorry, Ryokan. I did not mean to. I tripped, I am so sorry. I offended you. Air so still it could suffocate. Only the drip from the wet sheet, and 2 uneven breaths. Ryo still held that left arm block, torso rigid. His throat bobbed painfully. He wanted to curse, but found his voice too dry to make a sound. At last, he slowly, stiffly, drew that dead heavy left arm back. Makoto still kept her head down. The hand that had covered her lips dropped. Her fingertips trembled. She did not dare look up. She bent to gather the shattered clay, then grabbed a rag to dab the mess, movements clumsy with panic. The red at her ears refused to fade. Her small, helpless back looked pitiable. Chapter 94, Evil Uchiha Vixen. A few days slipped by in suffocating silence. Ryo's recovery was astonishing. Strength returned to his left arm like the spring tide, and he no longer confined himself to the bed. He began moving around, slow and cautious at first, then quickly steady and powerful. Within the cramped tent he paced and stretched. Each motion drew smooth lines of muscle and carried an irrepressible aura of killing intent. The numbness from the poison was completely gone. Power surged in him, and he longed for the raw satisfaction of blood and battle. Makoto still shadowed him, bringing water, medicine, and those bland rations. But something had changed. She had grown quiet, no longer forcing conversation. When Ryo exercised, she would stand in the shadowed corner, a rolled medical scroll in hand. Yet whenever his movements tugged at a wound, her fingers tightened imperceptibly on the scroll's edge, then relaxed when he steadied. When those bright black eyes occasionally met Ryo's, she would dodge like a frightened deer. A faint, suspicious blush flashed across her pale cheeks, slow to fade. There was clear annoyance at herself in her gaze, and a kind of timid avoidance, as if still mortified by that accident, not daring to look him in the eye. Ryo's face stayed iron cold. He ignored her. At last, just then, the air changed. Tsunade stepped in as Ryo, back to the flap, practiced one-handed forms. Every punch ripped the air with dull, sharp pops. Sweat soaked his vest, clinging to the taut-back muscles already more than halfway recovered. In the corner, Makoto sat with her legs to the side, head lowered, fingertips unconsciously tracing the open scroll. Tsunade's hawk-sharp gaze swept them both. Ryo's sweat slicked power. Makoto's deliberate, humble, persistent quail pose. She recalled the faint, ambiguous ripple she had walked in on days ago, and the strange sensation beneath her fingertips when she had checked Ryo's shoulder blade. Instantly, a nameless wicked fire, mixed with irritation, flared up her spine. She was a shinobi, a medical sage, a veteran of battlefield hell. Makoto's little tricks were child's play to her. The carefully averted eyes, the blush, the cautious stance, every bit of it was embellished bait. Anger surged in Tsunade's chest. She wanted to rip the flimsy act to shreds on the spot and throw this heart-disturbing girl out. By instinct she wanted to protect the brat who had dragged her back from the edge of hell. She would not let him fall into a little fox's snare. But then her eyes fell on Ryo's back, those deep, bone-showing scars. Scars earned to bring her, Jiraiya, and even that idiot Orochimaru back alive. The scolding at her lips thinned into a hard, impatient snort from the nose. HMPH. 2 steps carried her to Ryo. She yanked up his arm to inspect the injury, rougher than last time, almost venting. Enough. You are out of here tomorrow. Her hands flew, and her fingertips skated over skin, the familiar resilient texture only irked her more. The motion hitched a fraction. Her eyes grew stormier. Standing here like a door god. Brat, back to your own quarters. The disinfectant stink in here gives me a headache. Decree delivered, she spun and strode for the door. As she passed the Uchiha girl by the flap, head perpetually bowed, still as a statue, Tsunade's eyes cut sideways, razor sharp. Not a question, a verdict and a warning. Threaded within, to her own shock, was a flicker of tacit leave, even a strange, reluctant anticipation. A tangle so complex it annoyed her more. Tsunade had seen through it, raged at it, then chose the simplest solution, out of sight, out of mind. She dumped the mess. Let the little fox play her game. That choice itself carried a guilt and evasion Tsunade did not recognize in herself. Makoto kept her head down until Tsunade's footsteps faded to nothing. Her spine still prickled with the memory of that icy, thorned gaze. Her heart hammered, half from the terror of being seen through, half from the thrill of passing the test. Tsunade had seen, and had not exposed it. That eerie permission shook and excited her more than any praise. Ryo rolled the shoulder Tsunade had squeezed painfully. Bone clicked. He worked his left arm, feeling muscle gather and stretch beneath skin. Tomorrow he would rejoin the unit. On the field, he would be faster. Harsher. Next time, he would never be as ragged as on Ridge B7. He shook off the useless thoughts and set for one last set. Ryokan, Makoto said softly, dust settling in her tone, calm and a newfound resolve he had never heard before. Starting tomorrow, I will not come anymore. Tsunade-sensei asked me to look after you for a while. That task is finished. A tiny pull at the corner of her mouth, like she tried to smile and failed. Her voice was level, unreadable. No performance of guilt, no exaggerated shyness, only a resigned statement, as if that kiss had never happened. From here on, during squad missions, I will be relying on Ryokan to look after us. Ryo said nothing. He only watched her. The haze that had clung to her for days, the fluster and guilt that annoyed him, had vanished. She stood there, inexplicably clear. Makoto bowed slightly with clan-perfect etiquette, smooth but lifeless. Without another word, she quietly gathered the small violet wicker chest in the corner, the one that had held precious sweets in her careful preparations. The lid clicked softly. She lifted the chest and walked toward the flap, steps still light but carrying a weary distance, as if a weight had been put down. Her black braid swayed with her steps, revealing the elegant, fragile line of her neck. Ryo stood where he was, gaze unconsciously following the back that was about to slip away. The next day, Ryo's squad assembled. Only, the air felt off. Naoki sensed something wrong in every direction. Between Ryo and Makoto there seemed to be a strange, complicated bond. And was he the odd wheel out? What exactly had happened while Ryo was recovering? Ryo-sama. Danzo-sama requests your presence. Before Naoki could sort it out, a shinobi arrived, respectful, to summon Ryo. Chapter 95. Grave. Torrential rain hammered Konoha's forward camp, hissing in the mud and flinging brown spray. The air was close and heavy, the reek of iron and powder choking every breath. WHSSSH. The sheet of rain split. 3 figures cut straight toward the command core, like 3 steel blades stabbing through the battlefield's clotted air. Naoki followed last with a pack on his back, eyes darting at the resting shinobi. But whenever Ryo passed, it was as if an invisible hand seized their throats. Men went rigid in an instant. Some ducked their heads and growled, Ryo-sama. More simply froze, scalps prickling, spines locking straight, not respect, but a marrow-deep fear that crept across the soaked ground like a cold serpent. Naoki swallowed hard. Days ago, the figure who single-handedly slaughtered through 1,000 Iwa, clashed head-on with Akagan, and, drenched in blood, dragged Tsunade and the others from a heap of corpses, had become the battlefield's deepest imprint. Fear, of pure, crushing power. Even if that power wore the face of a refined-looking red-haired boy. Catching every odd, fearful glance, Naoki's Adam's apple bobbed. Once he had fantasized about renown, praised by thousands, heart-stoked by the will of fire. Cold reality had doused that fantasy long ago. Know yourself. Live. All thanks to Ryo. The thought tasted bitter. His nails bit crescent moons into his palms. Inside the command pavilion, currents went dark. WHSH. The heavy flap rose and dropped, sealing out the storm. Lamps guttered. Cheap incense bit the nose. Maps papered the walls. A colder, thicker stale hung in the air, ambition and calculation, like fog that would not lift. On the dais, Shimura Danzo's hawk eyes fixed on Ryo the moment he entered. When his gaze slid to Naoki and, especially, to the silent Uchiha girl at Ryo's side, a sharp twitch stabbed the edge of his eye. That damned Uchiha whelp. The dark fire in his chest whooshed up. When Ryo lay comatose with mortal wounds, what an opportunity. Poison. A medical mishap. Battlefield complications. The perfect stage. A hero who tragically succumbed to his injuries, who would trace it back to Danzo. Ruined. She kept vigil day and night. Those eyes, undisguised vigilance and silent threat, kept his men from even approaching the bed. Every probe, lightly, flawlessly deflected. All for nothing. And he could only watch as this unruly monster recovered, stronger. Danzo ground his teeth to chalk, strangled the urge to roar, and forced a waxen, concerned smile. His voice came thin and muffled, ice wrapped in velvet. Ryokan, how is the recovery? Ryo stepped to the center and did not bother raising an eyelid to that counterfeit face. His reply fell like ice on stone. Not dead. The air froze. The temperature dropped. Danzo's fake smile calcified. HMPH. He swallowed the snarl, coughed, and waved his lone Ruta pointy out. He lifted a special scroll sealed in wax and intoned with mock gravity. The front is tight. We need the sharpest blade to break the game. His voice dropped to a coaxing rasp that pretended to command life and death. Look at this. Do it, and it is worth more than killing 100 elites head-on. He slid the scroll toward Ryo, eyes locked on his to catch the slightest ripple. Ryo's face was a slab of ice. He reached, long fingers teasing. The wax seal crumbled like wet paper. He scanned the inked lines. Location. AIM border, Nohara settlement, population about 600. Status. Civilian vassals under Hanzo. Objective. Stage a massacre using Suna and Iwa-style tools and ninjutsu traces. No survivors. Executor. Kamiyama Ryo and squad. Strategic aim. Frame Suna and Iwa, enrage Hanzo into a fight to the death. Konoha profits. Time limit. 72 hours. Silence imploded. Even the wick's tiny crackle boomed. Smoke hung frozen. The air was thick enough to choke. Danzo's heart crept up his throat. Submission, or trouble worse than before. Ryo never paused. Snap. He folded the scroll in one clean motion. Clack. The death sentence for 600 innocents landed back on Danzo's desk like trash, open contempt, rolled twice, and pinned a blurred border on the map. Ryo raised his head. Silver eyes bored straight through Danzo's shadowed schemer's gaze. His voice was so flat it chilled Danzo's spine. Find someone else. Kamiyama Ryo. Danzo exploded, palm slamming the table. Bang. Maps jumped. Gear rattled. This is a wartime order. His voice went high and thin, authority challenged in a flame. You are a registered Konoha Chunin. Obeying orders is your duty. I will not tolerate this insolence. The roar crashed in the enclosed space. Nawaki went paperwhite. Cold sweat soaked his back. His right hand jerked to his tool pouch, knuckles bloodless. Makoto slid half a step forward without a sound, nearly brushing Ryo's arm in a silent guard. Frost flashed in her lowered eyes. A cool kunai fell into her palm. Her killing intent prickled, spearing Danzo. Ryo stood under the roar in the avalanche of killing intent, eyes lowered. Then those eyes cut up, twin blades forged at absolute zero, stabbing into Danzo's pupils. My blade, he said, not loud, but each word detonated, iron law embodied, kills only those who should die. As the words fell, Ryo shifted, barely, but with a natural inevitability, putting the full height of his frame between Makoto and Danzo, casting her in his shadow. An iron wall rose, unscalable, between Malice and its target. A pressure like an ancient beast awakening erupted, silent, and heavier than a 1,000-fathom cliff. Cold as a polar trench. The tense air seemed ripped from its lungs. GHH. Danzo faltered. He felt like a leaf in a maelstrom. His back took a phantom hammer blow. Breath punched out. Thud, thud, thud. He lurched backward, unable even to cry out, and slammed into his chair. One hand crushed the armrest, veins bulging. The other clutched his chest. His face flushed purple from the neck, then blanched blank. Sweat beaded and ran like peas across his brow. His vision vignetted. Pupils pinholed with terror. Pain screamed. Thought fragmented. Suffocation. Pain. Boundless fear. Death pressed cold and certain to his throat. No probe, no test, a naked warning, the next heartbeat could cleave him in two. From the corner of her lowered gaze, Makoto watched his twisted grimace. Her chin lifted the tiniest fraction. A glacial curve flickered at her lip and died. Ryo's subtle move to shelter her hit like a tidal wave in her chest. The safest place, beneath the strongest wing, paired with the enemy's humiliation, made for perfect, savage joy. Look, only I stand behind him. Possessiveness surged, fully fed. She dropped her lashes, masking every trace. That flash of triumph did not escape Danzo, whose senses had sharpened to sickness by pain and shame. This Uchiha, born wicked, little vixen. The poison of hate scalded what remained of his reason. The ruined poison plot, the accident that never happened, images stuttered past. Her fault. The snake coiled around Ryo, had driven him to riskier games. His eyes vomited venom, fixing on Makoto, maddened vivisection in the gaze. Ryo snorted, cold as hellwind. His pressure did not ease. It surged. Crack. An invisible edge kissed Danzo's neck. The chill bit marrow deep. An ice tub dropped. Every cell shrieked danger. Sweat drenched his underclothes. The spiked warning nailed into his brain. The leaking malice sluiced back behind his eyes and stilled, dead water. Damn it. The monster would kill him. Danzo dragged air, chest flopping like a stranded fish. Colorless now, all threat and fury doused, only a strangled humiliation remained. He shooed weakly, as if waving off a fly. Enough. His voice rasped. With war so near, since Ryokan has other ideas, he did not speak the word scroll again. His glance flicked to a plain roll lying at the desk's edge. In a blink a better, cleaner, deadlier idea sketched itself. If you will not die by my hand, go to hell by theirs. A thin gleam skated through his eye. He snatched the plain scroll and snapped into command. Urgent from the front. Iowa is moving. Route intelligence, northern grass country buffer, abnormal Iowa infiltration. He hurled the scroll hard at Ryo. Critical. Possible second front to threaten our flank. Ryo squad, by order, move immediately to recon. Determine enemy scale and intent. If you find a hidden strongpoint, you are authorized either to annihilate at discretion or signal to camp at once. Risk, take it. Die with it. The scroll hit Ryo's palm, light and rough. He did not bother to look at Danzo's face. He ripped the tie and skimmed. Location. Northern grass buffer, around a Sioux Gorge, high risk. Objective. Recon Iowa infiltration, size and purpose. If enemy strongpoint confirmed, destroy at discretion or urgently report, risk borne by unit. Executor. Kamiyama Ryo and squad, war emergency. Time limit. 168 hours, 7 days. Ryo's face was still water. A good place. Iowa, time to balance accounts. He stuffed the scroll into his vest without even a nod. For a dog sending him to the slaughter, why waste breath? He did not spare Danzo's face, twisted with the thrill of a plan regained and respect in ruins. Ryo spun. Red hair carved a decisive arc. Whump. The heavy flap snapped up in his wake. The wet roar of the camp poured in. Ryo stepped out. Nawaki and Makoto shadowed him without hesitation. The flap dropped like a coffin lid, sealing every venomous scheme and snarled shame inside the dark. Within, only Danzo's bellows and the wick's weak crackle remained. A tiny flame throbbed at the dead center of the black, limning a demon's face in shadow. Humiliation, beyond any he had known. Then that venom pivoted, onto another figure. And that damned, innately evil Uchiha vixen. She ruined everything. They should both die. Rage throbbed his temples. His skull threatened to split. Ryo to grass country, to Ashu Gorge. A cold delight sluiced his shame and anger. What was that place? A meat grinder. Iwa, who had just lost a Kaiwa and 1,000 elites to him, were sharpening knives. Onoki, sleepless and vengeful, would not miss a revenge platter brought to his table. And, his mouth stretched in a soundless, twisted grin. 100 million Ryo. Red hair. Silver eyes. Iwa's nemesis. The bounty news must have flown like plague on wings, raking the shinobi world. Suna's puppeteers. Kiri's assassins. Kumo's bruisers. And the hounds of the underworld, bounty men and ninja syndicates. 100 million. Enough to make anyone feral. Danzo shivered with a strangled pleasure, his rasp like a snake's tongue tasting poison in the dark. Cruel expectation filled the dead tent. Let Iwa's massed forces, and the scavenging wolves of the shinobi world, give you a proper welcome, little monster. You will learn soon what it means to refuse me, Shimura Danzo. Let grass country be your grave. Outside, the downpour did not tire. Ryo crossed the command cordon in a single step, without slowing. Cold rain battered his shoulders, but could not quench the icy, pure fire burning in his silver eyes. Iwa. Time to settle the bill. To be continued.